In mid-July, life on the farm no longer seemed so cloudless to Seiki. The heat was unbearable. It seemed as if nature was melting like a piece of plastic in a fire. The ground beneath his feet had turned into a crust and was crunching unpleasantly. The man was constantly checking his harvest, afraid that it might melt along with everything else. When Saeki left the civil service to become a farmer, he never thought it would be so hard. It was a really hot summer. All his dreams that it would be easier after the showers were shattered. Dry days returned again after a long rain. Thanks to the temperature and precipitation in this region, vegetables and fruits grow very quickly. However, compared to a normal year, there were still many difficulties. While smoking a cigarette, Seiki thought about what he should cook for dinner. Thinking about this, he tried to push away his dark thoughts. And so it goes, day after day. The same actions. Only a hot bath allows you to relax a little and wash away the sweat after a hard day. This evening, a man came home, barely able to walk. As he approached the refrigerator to help himself to a can of beer, there was a knock at the door. Seiki opened the door. A young girl in heavy armor stood on the threshold. She asked to stay the night with him. The man stepped back, letting the warrior in. He looked at her curiously, her armor clanking with every step the stranger took. A sword gleamed on a leather belt. "I don't mind sleeping even in the barn," the girl said. "One night is enough." Seiki wondered who she was. He asked if she was late for the bus, but the stranger only shook her head. Trying unsuccessfully to find out anything about her, the man heard only a name. "My name is Christina Brunhilde von Melvis, first daughter of the Melvis couple from the kingdom of Uraid," said the strange guest. Saeki hesitated for a long time before asking the main question. "This may sound rude, but how old are you?" The girl frowned and replied that she was 18. "So young, what are you doing in the middle of this backwater?" he asked. "Our army was defeated. Perhaps you have heard of the battle near Mozan Gate? We could not cope with the relentless attacks of the orcs. I barely escaped from their hands at the end of the battle." Saeki couldn't take her story seriously. He said with a smile that it must have been a terrible battle. "You can just call me Chris," the girl said. Looking the blonde up and down, the farmer tried to explain. "I live here alone. You are old enough to understand." "You better give up on the idea of staying here," he said. It would be quite problematic if she were to spread all sorts of bad rumors about Japan when she returned home, Saeki thought. But at the same time, rejecting a woman in trouble is a disgrace for a man. "I can't allow that." The girl staggered and almost fell on him. "I am so tired that I cannot take another step," she said. "I would rather spend the night with a strange man than be defiled by orcs," she said quietly. Seiki was taken aback. "What are you talking about?" he thought. The girl knelt before him. "What are you going to do?" the man thought. "Okay, I understand. I will let you stay here," he said. "I will definitely repay your kindness," she said. "Please don't worry about it," Seiki assured the girl. "The only thing is, the house is a little dirty. You'll have to be patient." The girl entered the room and whispered that she had no reason to complain. The night's lodging was more than enough. She took off her heavy armor and placed it on the floor. Seiki looked at her gear in silence. He thought it must have been hard for her to wear it. The man told her that if she wanted, she could take a bath. The guest was surprised that he could afford her such luxury. Seiki opened the door and showed the girl an old bathtub with a boiler for heating. Holding 2 bottles in his hands, Saki explained to Chris which was the soap and which was the shampoo. "I don't have conditioner. I'll have to be patient," he explained to his guest, and showed her how to squeeze out the shampoo. While the owner was out of the bathroom, the girl began to examine the bottles. It seemed that she was seeing something like this for the first time. It looked like some kind of aromatic oil, she thought. Saeki returned with a robe-like garment. "It was a yukata," he explained. "Place the left side over the right and secure it with the belt. I will be outside watching the fire. Please tell me if the water is too hot or lukewarm," Seiki instructed the girl. Outside, tending the fire, the man wiped the sweat from his face. He asked Chris if the water was warm, and she said yes. "Is everything you said really true?" Seiki asked through the barred window. "What country do you come from? It seems you still don't believe that I am the daughter of Count Melvis of the Kingdom of Uraid," Chris replied. "By the way, master," the girl said. Saeki was surprised by such an address. "I still don't know your name." "My name is Seiki Kanji. Seiki is the first name and Kanji is the last name," the man said. "I hope I wasn't too rude," he heard her reply. "I didn't know your noble birth or family name." "There's nothing special about my name, don't worry," Saeki hastened to assure her. It's just an ordinary surname. The man smoked a cigarette and made sure that the boiler was already warmed up properly. Seiki asked Chris if the water was warm, but there was no answer. The girl did not respond to his cries, and the owner decided to make sure everything was okay. He went into the bathroom, having warned Chris about it beforehand. The clothes remained neatly folded in the basket. The guest was nowhere to be seen. Seiki looked into the bath and saw Chris. The exhausted guest was lying with her eyes closed. Seiki came out of the bathroom, but the image of Chris was still in his mind. He looked at her with an unseeing gaze, and his thoughts were far away. My legs won't obey me. I'm out of breath from the endless running. Lightning flashed. They shout after her, "Loser, coward, traitor!" But she would never betray her own. Damn it, the damn orcs are catching up. Their grinning faces are everywhere. Rock. If only she had the courage. This is the end. Better to die than to be dishonored by the orcs. Mom. Dad. I'm sorry. She's flying. An endless fall into the abyss. Chris woke up screaming. Yukara. Why did that word come to mind? Seiki was busy in the kitchen. Cooking breakfast for more than just himself was something he definitely enjoyed. The girl stood hesitantly at the threshold. Good morning, she said. The man turned around and greeted her. There was a pause between the young men. How did Chris end up dressed and in bed? Seiki must have just pulled her out of the bath, wrapped her in a towel, and then changed her into a yukata. Seiki thought about how the last time he met a woman was several years ago. Now he was 32, single and alone. Distracted from his thoughts, the man offered his guest breakfast. Chris looked at the table in amazement. So much food! She asked permission to start eating. While we eat, we can talk, he noted. Chris only looked away, embarrassed. Remembering how she was yesterday, Seiki thought that she looked like a completely different person. He helped the girl with cutlery, which she seemed unfamiliar with. Itadakimasu, Seiki said. Chris asked what it meant. The man explained to her that it was like a prayer before eating. We Japanese are Buddhists, although I wouldn't call it a prayer, and after eating, we say gochiso-sama deshita. It's gratitude for the food, and a sign that we're not neglecting our duties. Chris nodded understandingly, folded her palms, and repeated after Seiki. And the man thought about the fact that his mysterious guest was not very familiar with the customs of the Japanese. The girl looked at her plate in surprise and asked the owner of the house what kind of food she had. Just try it, Seiki replied. It's white rice. Chris scooped up a spoonful and, having tasted it, closed her eyes in pleasure. Next, the guest carefully took a piece of fish with a fork. She found each dish extremely tasty. The girl was delighted that her virtue had prepared everything himself. She praised every piece. Seiki looked at her with a smile. Let's talk after breakfast, Seiki said, realizing that the conversation wouldn't work now. So, to sum up your story, Seiki concluded, you have no idea how you ended up here. And you don't have a passport either. Two options. You are either a cosplayer from a European country or a knight fighting against orcs, leaving the battlefield to deliver a message. But I'll never believe it, Seiki said. That's exactly how it was, Chris countered. I am very grateful to you, the guest bowed to the man. In any case, you have helped me a lot, Kanji-dono, and now I have to go. Hey, where are you going? Seiki shouted. I need to go to the capital urgently to report on the combat situation, the girl said. But first, let me give you something, the man objected. The owner of the house handed the guest a tracksuit. Try it on, he asked. Once outside, Seiki offered to help, but the girl refused, warning that the path could be dangerous. Then the man offered to go in his truck. In the cabin, Chris clutched her seatbelt. She had never seen a car before and was terrified of the speed at which Seiki was driving. The sharp turns made the girl press herself into the seat in fear. Finally, it was all over, and the man stopped the car at the side of the road. Having struggled out of the car, Chris tried to cheer herself up, but numerous training sessions in the past did not help her at all. Despite her rich vocabulary, she knows nothing about Japanese culture, Seiki thought. It's a thrill, the girl angrily remarked, still shaking a little. It seems they arrived at the very place from Chris's last memories. The girl looked around the area. Then I was attacked by orcs and I jumped off the cliff, she said. Seiki wondered how much longer she would continue to weave this nonsense. But out of interest, he went to look for that very rock with Chris. We're here, the girl said as they approached a small clearing. There's nothing here, Seiki noted, beginning to get tired of this nonsense. I was really here! Chris was very angry. But there is not a single rock here, the man said. They looked at each other for a long time. The girl's face expressed great sadness. She looked at the trees for a long time, not understanding how this could have happened. Chris looked at Seiki angrily. How could he not believe her? I am the eldest daughter of Count Melvis. I am Christina Brunhilde von Melvis, the warrior cried. No more, no less, she had already whispered. Chris-san, Seiki quietly said her name and shook his head. I really don't understand any of this, Chris said. Still, what could have happened, she asked. For example, that you came from a world different from this one, Saki noted. A sigh escaped the girl's lips. Suddenly, the girl remembered one detail. A scroll of teleportation. My friend the Archmage gave it to me. Again, the man's surprise knew no bounds. For that matter, does magic even exist? I've been using magic since we met, the blonde noted. To speak your language. After these words, many things fell into place in Saiki's head. Everything is clear to me, said the warrior. Chris regretted that she couldn't even pass on a message to her parents. After all, she was no longer a messenger with a message or a knight from the kingdom of Uraid. However, I'm alive. Let's go home, Saiki asked. They rode in silence for a long time. Finally, Saiki said that she was a very strong girl. Chris looked at him in surprise. Let's eat something tasty, the man suggested. After a few minutes of silence, Chris asked him to stop feeling sorry for her. Only now did Seiki realize that he had made a big mistake. Looking at the sad girl, he thought what a fool he was. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Uraid, an order was given to send another messenger to report on the situation in Mozangate. Chris thought that if she could use the forbidden magic of teleportation, she would send a message to her world. And what to do now, she absolutely did not understand. Seiki didn't know how to fix the situation. The conversation wasn't going well. He tried to cheer the girl up, but she still sat there with an indifferent look. Chris-san, he began. I need to go to the field for a while, do you mind? The girl looked at him and replied that she didn't see a problem with it. I have a delivery to make. Sorry, I have to hurry a little, the man justified himself. That's right, Kanji Dano is a farmer, Chris thought. Seiki stopped near the field. After asking her to wait a bit, he began loading boxes of vegetables. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the girl want to touch the electric fence surrounding the field. Be careful! But it was too late. Chris grabbed the wire. The electric shock was not strong, but the girl fell to the ground. Chris exclaimed that it was lightning magic. No, it's not magic. It's an electric fence. Please wait in the car, Seiki said. While the man was busy with his vegetables, the girl sat on the edge of the truck and waited patiently. Seeing an unfamiliar vegetable that looked like an elongated purple pear, Chris asked if it was an auberge. We call this vegetable an eggplant. It turned out that the girl had never seen purple eggplants. Seiki explained that there are also white and green eggplants, but Japanese ones are this color. The farmer told his guest about these vegetables and how to cook them, and she listened with interest. The young people walked around the field, examining the plantings. Seiki got very carried away and even explained in detail about the Italian variety of eggplant Violetta lunga. His lecture was even too detailed. Holding the eggplant in her hands, Chris expressed her desire to definitely try it. Their path then led them through rows of tall plants that Chris had named Martha. These are the Rosso Sicilia variety. We call them tomatoes, Seiki explained, and he picked a few and gave them to the girl. The guest liked the tomatoes. She ate the juicy fruits with pleasure. She noticed another variety of unusual elongated shape. Having picked a tomato, she examined it with interest. Having loaded the last box into the truck, Seiki explained that the vegetables needed to be taken to the warehouse to broker Yao-san, who was supposed to accept them. The young men got into the truck and drove on. Chris was puzzled by such a rush. Surely vegetables can't spoil that quickly? Seiki explained that he was a bit of a stubborn merchant, and the vegetables needed to arrive as quickly as possible. The man told the guests that Yao-san had helped him a lot when he first started farming. Suddenly, Seiki saw something. Chris turned her gaze to the road and also saw a strange flash in the sky. Amazing, Seiki exclaimed. I thought the existence of another world was just an absurd story, but looking at this scenery, I can't help but believe it. Chris looked at him reproachfully, and the farmer realized that he had blurted out something without thinking again. But the girl was convinced that they were not in the kingdom of Uraid. We're here, wait in the car, the farmer said and got out. Chris watched him talk to a short, balding man. She thought it would be nice to know more about this world. She was already thinking about getting out of the car. But Saeki told her to stay. Chris looked at Yaoreno's thin hair, and his bald spot bothered her. When they returned, Chris smiled and thought that she was back home. Saeki was tormented by guesses. What if her story was true? The man offered the guests to have lunch. The girl enthusiastically offered to help with the cooking. Saeki seemed to not believe that she could cook. Chris pointed out that just because she had been studying at a night school since she was 12, it didn't mean she couldn't do housework. After specifying that they would be making pasta, the guest watched in fascination as the farmer filled the pot. She could not understand where the water in the tap was coming from. When Saeki lit the gas stove, Chris was amazed. She exclaimed that there was a magical burner here. The man explained about the plumbing and the stove. There are no things in our world that use magic, he explained calmly. Saeki told the guest that many things can be created with the help of science. If you drop something, it will fall to the ground. There are disciplines that study the logic of such things and the foundations of the universe. Chris was amazed that in his world, there was no need to burn wood or carry water from a well. Saeki chuckled and told her not to worry about it and asked her to chop the vegetables. The guest took the knife and examined it carefully. This knife was Seiki's pride. But seeing how she examined the knife, he decided that she was too carried away by it. The cooking process captivated both of them. The man peeled the vegetables and gave them to the girl to cut. Christina handled her task deftly. Saeki poured the pasta into the pot. Chris finished cutting. Both were pleased with the result. While the pasta was cooking, the girl asked how else she could help, but everything was already ready and they could sit down at the table. The man placed the plate of pasta on the table, although Chris had only cut vegetables. She liked the fact that she helped Saeki. The girl was amazed at how quickly they prepared dinner. "It's great," Saeki said after trying the pasta. "And no wonder, since the vegetables grew just fine." Chris also started eating. Watching her deftly wrap the macaroni on her fork, Saeki couldn't help but smile. Her satisfied look spoke for itself. "So you liked it," the farmer concluded. The girl was overwhelmed with emotions. "I haven't eaten something so amazing in so long." "Breakfast was okay, but it didn't even compare to lunch," Chris cried. Saeki was pleased that the girl liked it. The young people finished their meal and bowed their heads in gratitude for the food. When you eat delicious food, all those unpleasant, sad, and cruel things are instantly forgotten. And when they are forgotten, all sorrows go with them, and all omissions remain in the past, whispered Chris. That's right, thought Saeki, remembering their sad walk through the forest. You will be able to look ahead, even if only for a short time, the girl said. A smile lit up the young man's face. Late at night, Saeki went out into the yard and took out his phone. He called his friend Honami. He asked how she was doing. After hearing the answer, Saeki got down to business. I have one request of you. It may seem strange to you, he said. Chris, who was lying awake, caught this snippet of conversation. Saeki got up exactly at 5 in the morning, looked at his watch, and went to the kitchen. Chris wished the man a good morning from her room. He asked if she had slept well and said it was time to make breakfast. When Chris showed up at the door, she said that she had slept soundly until the morning. Judging by her appearance and tired eyes, Saeki didn't believe her and asked if everything was okay. You'd better rest today, he said softly to the guest. I'd like to repay you for your food and lodging, the girl answered rather sharply. Let me help you with your work to repay the debt, Chris said, calming down a little. Saeki explained to her that he had spoken with an official yesterday and they had discussed some issues regarding the situation with Christina. The warrior asked how a simple farmer had connections in the government. Saeki replied that he was a friend from college, and Chris was completely confused. She had never heard of farmers studying in college. Saeki decided to change the subject. It was incredibly hot today, he said, and working in the fields would be difficult. Chris then eagerly put on her helmet. It's a bit unsuitable for working in the fields, the man explained, and brought a straw hat for Chris. She looks like a schoolgirl on a field trip, Saeki thought, smiling slightly. He came closer and leaned towards the girl. Chris-san, the wind might blow away the hat, he said, and touched the strings of the hat. While he was tying it, Chris looked at him with embarrassment, not expecting such concern. She thanked her benefactor and turned away so that he would not see her burning cheeks. The vision came to her suddenly. Someone from the fog said that all her comrades were dead. She saw the lifeless bodies of warriors and the ruins of her castle. Chris closed her eyes tightly and screamed. Seiki's voice pulled her out of her nightmare. He called out to her, asking if everything was okay. Christina opened her eyes and assured the man that everything was fine. Once again they rode to the field in complete silence. Saiki thought that she was always in such a high spirit, but now she was sitting quietly, and something had clearly happened. In the field, Seiki brought plastic boxes to the eggplant bed. He showed the girl how to use pruning shears to pick the vegetables. The eggplants need to be carefully cut and carefully placed in the box. Don't even think of throwing them away. Chris was offended at him. "Do you really think that I will treat the fruits of your hard work like that?" she said reproachfully. Seiki saw how the girl was doing, and he noticed that she was very hard-working. "Perhaps you have done this kind of work before," he asked. Chris replied that nobles only owned land, and that this was her first time doing farm work. Chris asked, "Have you always been a peasant?" "No, I've only been doing this for 4 years. It's just my occupation. There are no classes in Japan, so your world is fundamentally different from mine," the warrior concluded. "I was just a salaryman in Tokyo. It's a big city," Seiki explained. "So you were a servant?" Chris asked. "Well, that's how I felt when I was 20, the farmer said. He saw something reflected on her face. He asked if everything was okay. Then Chris asked his age, and when he told her he was 32, she was very surprised. She had no idea he was that much older than her. She wondered why he was still single at that age. Seiki didn't answer her. From the look on his face, Chris said he knew the solution to this problem. The girl said, "Maybe I should become your bride. Isn't that a good idea?" When he asked her why she decided so, Chris explained that she was an illegal immigrant in his country after all. An 18-year-old girl from another world proposes to him. "It's mind-boggling. You say you want to be my wife," he said. "She made me, a 32-year-old man, blush with embarrassment," he thought. Seiki asked, "You wouldn't even really choose someone like me, would you?" "It's okay even if it's not serious," he quickly reassured the surprised girl. "In my world, the head of the family decides who your partner will be. But out of the possible candidates like the fat cheapskate or the perverted grandfather, I choose the middle-aged ex-farmer," Chris added cheerfully. The girl noticed that everything was different in Japan. Seiki suggested that perhaps it had been like that in the past. "Let's get to work," he urged her. Later, when they were relaxing, sitting on a spread-out blanket and sipping iced tea, Seiki noticed that Chris seemed to like to chat. "I have a hard time getting along with people who talk a lot," the man admitted. "Then I wouldn't want to disturb you," Chris replied. Saeki hastened to assure her that everything was fine, and that he even felt a surge of strength when talking to her. "I just don't like people who are always talking and shouting. It seems that you couldn't marry a nobleman's daughter," Chris noted. "I would refuse," the young man replied with a laugh. "I'll take care of you for a while," Seiki assured. "In our last conversation, Honami said she'd find out if anyone with a name like Chris-san had entered the country. It'll probably take a week or two." After finishing harvesting and delivering the vegetables to Yao-san, the young people returned home. "If there is any more work I can do, please tell me. I don't want you to treat me as a guest," Chris asked. "I won't give you any hard work, except for harvesting. Although, when the time comes, I'll let you clean the house," he said with a smile. Seiki asked her what she wanted for lunch. Chris remembered the pasta from yesterday. She really liked it, and replied that she didn't know what else he could make. "Since it's so hot today, we'll have something cold," the farmer said. "Do you like cold food?" He saw Chris wince and point out that it wouldn't be raw meat. "I'm not picky about food," the girl explained, "but other than freshly picked vegetables, I don't like raw food." There are no refrigerators in Chris's world, so she's afraid of dying from stale food, the man guessed. He led the girl to the refrigerator and opened it. Chris was amazed. She saw frozen food and thought it was ice magic or winter magic. Seiki said, "This is the power of science," surprised Miss Knight. "There will be cold soup for lunch today. It is a country dish, but I guarantee it will be delicious," the farmer promised. He explained to the girl that different prefectures have their own signature dishes, and he especially likes Miyazaki-style miso soup. "We need perilla," the man remembered, and led the guest to his garden. She was surprised that he also had his own vegetable plot near the house. Having asked the girl to cut the leaves he had brought into pieces, he placed a cutting board and a knife in front of her. Chris enthusiastically set to work. "She's doing quite well," Seiki thought, looking over the girl's shoulder. When she finished, The cooking was in full swing. Saiki showed his guest how to work with a cucumber to get rid of its bitter taste. He rolled the vegetable on a board, sprinkled with salt. "Now, slice it thinly," the farmer asked. "The cold miso soup is ready," the farmer announced, placing a bowl in front of Chris. The girl asked how to eat it properly. "We pour the ice-cold soup over the hot rice," Saiki showed the guest. Chris was surprised again that the hot rice had turned cold. She liked the way the soup went down her throat and cooled her down nicely. The taste was just wonderful, just right for the hot summer, she noted. Saiki watched with pleasure as Chris devoured the soup. When her bowl was empty, he offered her more. While they were eating, the phone rang. The name Izawa Honami appeared on the screen. Saiki picked up the phone. After speaking, he slammed the phone shut and returned to his guest. "My friend just called me. My request has been reviewed," he said. "The chief gave you a dressing down. You were told to leave you alone," Saiki announced to the warrior. She looked at him in bewilderment. And then the girl went berserk. She asked what all this meant. "Calm down. I think the management made a logical decision." Saiki hastened to calm the fury. "Chris-san, you proclaimed yourself to be a person who came from another world. We can't believe it, alas. People will consider your story a fiction." The angry girl asked what she should do then, since she was still an illegal immigrant. Saiki explained that Hanami will come tomorrow and will decide what to do when she meets you in person. "To tell you the truth, I'm half sure that you're from another world. I can't believe in another country either," she said, and then cried out, "And what part of my story do you actually believe?" "I don't think you're lying. Rather, you're completely incapable of lying," Saiki defended himself. "Everything you're thinking is written on your face. Everything can be understood from your facial expression." However, Saiki didn't voice his thoughts. "Don't treat me like a child. I'm already 18, Chris exclaimed, and immediately regretted it. She remembered how she was told that she was too straightforward. "It seems that I really am still a child," Chris decided. That night, the girl lay awake again, and Saiki smoked for a long time on the porch. Both were worried and blamed themselves for the words they had said. Their synchronized sighs could be heard from the rooms every now and then. In the morning, both of them still couldn't calm down. Chris left the room without saying a word. Saiki also silently prepared breakfast. Finally, he asked how she had slept. "Good," the girl answered. "Are we going to the field today?" Saiki said that was it, and that they should get ready. On the field, they again kept their distance and remained silent. Finally, Saiki called out to the girl. "I don't understand other people's feelings," he tried to explain. "That's why I can hurt them. If I ever do something unpleasant, just tell me and I'll apologize sincerely," the farmer asked. Chris looked at his face for a long time, and then turned away again. Saiki stood there, confused, unable to understand what he had said. At home, the farmer asked the girl to hang out the washing. When she finished, he noticed with relief that she was no longer sulking. As they sat on the porch, Chris suddenly asked that Seiki's friend must be a very good person, and they must be very close friends, since he was going to visit them specifically at Seiki's request. "Since you're both women, you won't have to worry too much when talking to her," the farmer remarked. "Wait a minute, so Hanami Dono is a woman?" Chris was startled. There was the sound of a car pulling up. A woman in a formal black suit stepped out of a black sedan. She slammed the door and walked toward the house. Chris's face changed. He was sulking again, Saiki decided. Everything was fine, the girl assured him. "How many years, how many winters," Kanji-kun, the official, greeted Saiki. With Honami's appearance, the sound of Seiki's usual daily life made a loud noise again. The woman stood in front of them and looked at each of them from head to toe. "You're early," Saiki noted. The girls greeted each other. Hanami asked why Chris didn't scream "kill me" like in the comics. Saiki asked Honami to calm down and apologized to Chris. "I know very well how much you like this kind of thing, but it's here in front of you," the man said. Honami quickly switched to business mode and began talking to Chris. Saiki was already beginning to think that they would become friends. The girls looked at each other. The man noticed a sharp change in Chris's behavior. The warrior introduced herself with her full name. Honami smiled at her and said that she was also very pleased to meet him. After listening to the girl's story, Hanami noted that it completely coincided with Seiki's story. The official continued her work. She asked, "Maybe then we can return to the main topic. Can you show me your magic?" Chris explained that she was already using magic when talking to her, but Hanami was not convinced. "You were talking about a teleportation scroll. Use what you can see," she said. "The scroll is in my armor. When I was attacked by orcs, I most likely filled it with magic, which explains why I am here. Catching Hanami's gaze, Chris asked if everything was okay. Let me rephrase my question, the official said. Please show me the magic that a knight like you can do and that can be seen with your own eyes, Hanami said with expression. No problem, Chris said. They all went outside. The warrior warned them not to expect too much from her, as she was a knight, not a mage. I'll show you one of the most basic spells, Chris said, making hand movements. Suddenly, to the surprise of the official and the horror of Seiki, a fireball appeared from the index finger of the girl knight. Something like that, said Chris, adding that it was a mere trifle for her. By the way, I can use a little healing magic, the girl said, and turned to her new acquaintances, who were stunned by what they saw. Hanami admitted that her favorite book was Harry Potter, and since childhood she was fascinated by the world of magicians. And she so hoped that one day people would learn to use magic. And here it is, 10 years later, a mysterious girl from another world summoned flames. Hanami thought spells were needed, but she saw that it was unnecessary. The mage casting the spells becomes the enemy's main target. Therefore, this process can be skipped, the warrior explained. My ideas about magic were not correct, but I would like to learn about other types of magic, the official asked, even opening her notebook for notes. Seiki was forced to interrupt them. The man, citing unfinished business, left no matter how hard Chris tried to ask him to stay. Hanami was relentless. Her mad thirst for knowledge about another world came crashing down on Chris with renewed vigor. In return, she promised to tell about Seiki. Something is bothering me, the girl admitted. Chris said that when she fell asleep in the bathroom, he may have seen her naked. Hanami asked the girl if she was scared. No, I'm not scared, Chris replied. But in my family, it's not customary to show your body to anyone except your husband. While driving, the farmer thought about what to cook for dinner and about Chris. At the same time, Hanami remembered her past with Saiki. Chris was only 18. That was the age she would have been entering college herself, Hanami thought. And at about that age, she met Kanji-kun. He defended her from some impudent guy, and he got beaten up. He was always too straightforward. Kanji is a kind-hearted person. Even now, this has not changed, the official concluded. I have no choice but to kill him, Chris suddenly said. He is a commoner, and in my world that is the norm. I will pretend I didn't hear anything, Hanami said. Having met him, I can say with certainty that Kanji Dono is truly a kind-hearted person, the warrior said. Hanami replied that there was no doubt about it. Chris-chan, you have nothing to worry about, Hanami assured her. You're confused, but that's completely normal, since you've entered another world. I will try to get the authorities to solve your problem, the official promised. But it will take some time. Chris thanked her for her help. I'll do everything to make you Kanji-kun's bride, Hanami said, but he's not a timid man and he values his partner. Please stop joking, Chris asked her. The thing is, I met Kanji-kun, but it was a long time ago, the official admitted. Sorry, but I don't understand. Can you be more specific? Chris asked. And Hanami whispered in her ear. The girl's cheeks turned red. I want to send my boss a video proof. Can you show me the flame again? Hanami asked. Chris nodded and tried to summon fire, but it didn't work. It seems I'm overheated, she said. Saiki returned home wondering what his guests were doing there. He found them in the yard laughing heartily. Hanami begged Chris to stop joking. They didn't see the farmer right away. I see you found common ground, Saiki noted. But then a cold sweat broke out on him. He pulled Hanami aside and asked if she had said too much to Chris. But then the girl asked about their relationship in the past. Hanami sighed and said that it was better to tell everything as it is. But that is far behind us, the official summed up her story. For some reason, looking away. Even if it is far behind and you are not married, the warrior began. Premarital relations are indecent. Both Hanami and Saiki just sighed. Time passed. Chris sat there offended. Seiki didn't know how to approach her. Chris-san, you must be hungry, he called. And Hanami herself complained to him that she was very hungry. The official advised him to prepare something unusual to cheer up his guest. Hanami offered to help, but Seiki waved her off, telling her to rest and that he could handle it himself. In the kitchen they argued. Hanami claimed that she was cooking better than before. Seiki joked that he didn't believe her. Chris-chan, do you want to help us? The girl heard them but did not turn around. I'll only get in the way, she said, but they insisted that she come to the rescue. So what are we going to cook? Two pairs of charming eyes looked at Saiki, and he became embarrassed. "We'll make curry," the man replied. Chris didn't know what it was, and Honami said she hadn't had Seiki's curry in a long time. When talking about curry, India comes to mind, but the dish has also gained universal popularity among the Japanese. The farmer gave a short lecture. The girls agreed that it was very interesting and began to chop vegetables. "Cut them larger," the man asked. "Curry is cooked in large chunks," Honami showed off her knowledge. "Besides, I grew the vegetables," Seki boasted. "You're doing well," Hanami Chris praised. "Of course I had the proper training," she responded, and wondered why the civil servant chose a career and not just got married. The girls finished cutting and gave the vegetables to Saeki. He made a creamy sauce and poured it all into a large saucepan. The man was going to add a certain ingredient to the dish to give it a special taste. After all, it would be Chris's first time trying it. Hunami approved of it. The three of them leaned over the pot, inhaling the wonderful aroma. "Excellent," Saeki concluded. When the curry and rice were ready, everyone sat down at the table together. "Let's eat," Honami said. The trio said itadakimasu, and the young men began to eat. Honami tasted the curry like school. Saeki confirmed that he based the taste of the school curry on it, as that was the only thing he remembered from there. "Sorry for the distraction. Curry is meant to be eaten with rice," Honami explained. Seeing Chris's strange expression, Saeki asked her if she liked it. The girl quickly assured him that the dish was very tasty. "But even though it's my first time eating it, it makes me very nostalgic," the warrior explained. "Curry is perfect for such occasions," the friends explained. Before leaving, Honami warned her friend that if Chris was from another world, then she belonged to extraterrestrial life forms. "There is a possibility that she could be carrying some kind of virus," the girl explained. "I understand. You already said that on the phone," the farmer assured her. "You don't understand," Hanami's voice sounded rough. "In the 3 days that you were together and nothing happened, it's a good sign, but still, if it becomes known that she poses a threat, we will take action. In the meantime, at this stage, it is best for you to refrain from touching other people, and no deliveries. In turn, I will not contact people for a week." Honami headed towards the car. Having already opened the door, Honami asked, "Where is Chris-chan?" "Sullen because of our past," the farmer replied. "Why don't you ask her about the rules of the Mavis family?" Seki waved his hand, and the official left. He stood there for a long time and watched her go. Saeki was racking his brains over what to tell Yao-san about the deliveries. When he entered the house, he was met by an angry Chris who complained that they had not invited her. The farmer apologized to her and said that he wanted to call her, but Honami had already left. "By the way, Chris, what are the rules in your family?" Seki was embarrassed when he asked this question. The girl understood why he asked about it, but she still gave a brief overview. "No one except my husband should see me naked," she said. "Chris-san," Seki said, "after I heat up the bath, you can go in there first, and I need to make a couple of calls." Chris sank into the warm water and finally relaxed. "I'll make him explain himself today," the girl thought. Yao-san was terribly angry, Saeki reported after the call. Chris came out of the bathroom and began interrogating. "Kanji Dono, since you don't have a lover, you are not meant for another woman," she began. "Then who wore the yukata I'm wearing now?" Saeki explained that he bought it for his mother, but he was never able to give it to her. "I'm sure she would be pleased, but she passed away soon after. I didn't know where to put the yukata, and until the burial clothes were chosen, I just carried it with me. I'm glad I can give it to you at least." "I'm sorry, you probably didn't want to talk about it," Chris said. "It's okay," the farmer assured her. "People die. Some later, some sooner, that's all." Chris thought that she was acting tactless, like some kind of child, although Kanji Dono was helping her a lot. "Oh yeah, I remembered, Seki, I wanted to teach you how to use a hairdryer." He took out the device and showed it to her. "Sit down," the man asked. Chris sat down in front of a large mirror. "If you don't mind, I'll touch your hair. If you don't want, I can just teach you." The girl said she didn't mind. Saeki turned on the hairdryer and directed the airstream at the guest's hair and asked if it was hot. She shook her head. "You have very beautiful hair," Saeki complimented. Chris closed her eyes. The Mavis family's rules stated that allowing a man to touch her hair while unmarried means I'm offering myself to him, Chris thought with horror. "But we're in Japan," she reassured herself. The girl liked the result of drying her hair, but she complained that she was a little afraid of the hairdryer. The man readily said that he would dry her hair tomorrow too. Seiki put away the hairdryer and said that he would also go to the bathroom, and it was time for her to go to bed. And in the bathroom, he was also visited by painful thoughts about the fact that Chris was only 18, and she was still just a child. Then why am I so worried? I need to pull myself together, the man thought. Coming out of the bathroom, Seiki saw Chris lying on the floor and asked why she was lying there. "You'll catch a cold," he showed concern. The girl did not answer. She was already fast and sweet asleep. The man lay down next to her and called out to her again. "I've already eaten too much, and there's no more room in me," she said in her sleep. "You're still just like a child," Seiki summed up. The morning announced itself with bright sunlight. The bell on the door made a light ringing sound, and Seiki and Chris lay side by side on the floor and slept soundly. In the morning, waking up on the floor, Seiki felt unwell. He tried to wake up Chris, who was still sleeping and muttering in her sleep. Seiki tried his best to fix her yukata, which had slipped, so that the girl would not wake up. The guest stirred, saying his name, and her yukata finally slipped off. Seiki realized that he had to run before she finally came to her senses. Chris stood up and said good morning to the man. Then she saw that her yukata had rolled off her. "So, Kanji, Dono, is there anything you want to tell me?" The girl reached for her sword. It was just a coincidence, Seiki tried to justify himself. The warrior did not like the answer. The next moment, she jumped up and chased the farmer, waving her sword furiously. Later, over the phone, Honami mocked him. "You still managed to survive," she laughed. "You called me just for this?" "Your partner is a real lady knight," she said. "I had to beg her to spare me," Seiki complained. "I am a man, and when she puts on a yukata, I try not to look closely. It seems that in their world there are no panties and bras. I gave her my tracksuit so that she would have something to wear," the man said. Honami suggested ordering Chris's underwear online. Seiki praised her for the good idea. When the official yelled at him for asking more questions about cup sizes, the man decided the conversation was over. He called Chris, apologizing again. She replied that she forgave him and realized that it was a misunderstanding. The girl sat down at the laptop. What she saw on the lingerie website shocked the guest. Although she realized that she was in another country, the models in the pictures seemed indecent to her, and also suspiciously similar to her. "I understand," she said, growing angry again. "You are gathering women from the kingdom of Uraid." "No," Seiki hastened to assure her. "It is only the internet." But Chris swung her sword again. At this time, Honami sent a letter to her boss, where she laid out the whole story in detail. Leaning back on the bed, she thought how slow officials really are. Hopefully, after watching the video, she will finally make a decision. Well, she thought, I'm in no rush. I have plenty of paid vacation days and food is no problem. I don't want to stress about this situation, so why don't I play a video game? Hanami asked Chris to make flames over and over again. Not a small light, but something impressive so that it does not look like a trick. It should feel like real magic. Chris created a large fireball. Hanami filmed it. "Watch carefully," the girl asked, and the ball split into 3 parts. Hanami was surprised. "Can you really move them freely?" "Yes, my limit is 3 for now, but I can also do this." Chris folded her hands in a sign. In the warrior's hands, 3 flames turned into a fiery hoop. She juggled them! The official's admiration knew no bounds. Suddenly, one of the flames separated and flew at Hanami. She screamed, but Chris managed to intercept the flame before it hit the girl. "Sorry, I was too careless," the warrior justified herself. "Can you stand up?" Chris extended her hand to Hanami. "I'm fine," she replied. Meanwhile, the official's boss was watching the broadcast of the fireballs. Hanami was looking through the news and saw headlines about virus outbreaks a few years ago. "Yes, I remember those incidents that happened back then," the official muttered. It was the 3rd day of her quarantine. The pile of unwashed dishes was piling up, and Hanami was still waiting for the government to contact her. The end of July is approaching. Exactly 1 week has passed since the night girl appeared on my doorstep, Seiki thought. It was exactly 11 a.m. when the truck entered Mitsuyama village, the place where Saki Kanji lives. Chris studied the world map. She had never seen such a detailed map. Where did a simple farmer get it? Seiki just chuckled. The man pointed to the island. "This is Japan, we are here. And here is Europe. People like you live there. In this world, our ancestors are called Homo sapiens. We have learned a lot from science." "Genetics," Seiki continued. I don't understand anything about it, but it's very interesting, Chris said. When the doorbell rang, Chris asked who it could be, because there were no houses nearby. Probably a neighbor, between us, less than a kilometer. Not so much, the farmer answered. There was a strange man standing at the door. He asked if Kanji-sama lived here. Yes, it's me, Saiki answered. Good afternoon, I brought you a parcel. Oh, right, Chris-san, our parcel has arrived, the man called the girl. The warrior looked at the bra with interest. There are hooks here. They need to be connected at the back, Saiki taught, thinking to himself how wrong it was that he was teaching her how to put on underwear. Look, the farmer put the bra on himself and showed her how to fasten it. She didn't understand anything and complained that it was too complicated. She laughed at Saki when he stood before her with his underwear fully buttoned up. This was worth going to college for, Kanji Dono. Are you laughing at me? He seemed angry. No, on the contrary, I am very grateful to you, the girl hastened to assure him. You even bought new clothes for a freeloader like me. It must have hit your wallet hard. No, Saiki assured her, clothes in this world aren't that expensive. When Chris tried on a new t-shirt and underwear, the man asked how she felt. The underwear helps keep her back straight, the girl said. The main problem solved. Maybe he should buy her some Western-style clothes, Saiki thought. Why are you crying? Chris asked. And the man was just glad that he no longer had to take his eyes off her. Another quiet day passed. Hanami hadn't called. Chris was still looking at the map while Saiki sat at his laptop, reading the news. She told us to stay home as much as possible, he replied. By the way, can the courier who brought us the package yesterday tell her? But she'll get angry, Chris replied. Kanji Dono, can you come over for a moment? Saki left his laptop open to a page about strange gravity field incidents and internet outages in Europe. A few days passed, and it was August. Saiki called Hanami. There's just a little bit left to wait, the girl asked. I've already convinced my boss, now I just need to convince my superior. For small and medium-sized businesses, trust is very important, and at least Hanami will explain the situation to Yao-san, who is having so many problems with the lack of deliveries. At least Chris is getting used to it little by little, thought Saiki, looking at the girl who was carrying a box of tomatoes to the truck. Chris saw Saiki looking closely at the leaves of the tomato plant and asked if everything was okay. These leaves are spoiled, we must remove them. The plants are affected by some disease. It could be caused by the climate, the sunlight, or the rain, any of these. In general, vegetable diseases can be divided into two groups, viruses and mold. Mold can be removed with agrochemicals, Saiki explained. You need to remove the affected parts of the plant. It's easier than wasting time on chemicals. Chris asked if the mold reaches the roots. No, I think it's aster jaundice, Saiki replied. The disease spreads through yellowish-brown spots. If it is truly a virus, we will not be able to cure them, the farmer concluded. Then Saiki remembered what Chris had said about healing magic and asked if she could use it on plants. Their life cycle won't change, but yes you can, Chris replied. So my dream of perfectly safe vegetables will come true, the farmer rejoiced. Magic isn't that convenient, the warrior objected. You can relieve fatigue or heal a wound, nothing more. If you lose an arm or a leg, there's nothing you can do. In my country, there are few soldiers who have lost a limb. They can return to the front, but most go to work in the temple. To the temple? Yes, a lot of children go there, Chris said. There they read books to the children or make copies of them. There is work for everyone. I see, said Saiki. It is like school, but you cannot choose what to do, the man noted. Whether there is a choice or not, it does not matter. You cannot choose your social status. It is given to you from birth, the warrior said. Sorry, my magic is useless here, Chris said, examining the plants. I must return to the capital and report the situation, she thought. In the morning, Chris asked what they were going to cook. Saiki decided that she was acting like a child when it came to cooking. We will make stuffed bell peppers that we picked today, the farmer said. He prepared the food and watched Chris cut onions, noting that she was no longer screaming about her eyes hurting. When Chris finished with the bow, she asked for a new task. Saiki prepared the minced meat, mixed it thoroughly, added spices, and instructed the girl to stuff the peppers. They boiled the stuffed pepper halves. Now they need to be carefully fried, the farmer explained. It smells very good, the girl noticed. Yes, the smell of meat is so tempting, Saiki replied. Dinner is ready, the man announced, setting the table. It looks very appetizing and colorful, Chris noted. The girl also liked the taste very much. She enjoyed every bite. Seiki asked how she liked the food. It's delicious, but there's a slight tingling sensation and the okra is very sticky. What is this? He's not a good liar, Seiki thought. I made yuzu kosho sauce based on my own taste. Well, if you don't like it, it can't be helped. But okra is good for your skin. After trying them again, she said they weren't so bad. Holy simplicity, Seiki thought. The stuffing contains very expensive 10-year-old yuzu kosho. And the stuffed peppers are very good and nourishing for the skin, Seiki noted, watching her lick her fork with pleasure. Morning. Kanji enters the kitchen and watches in surprise as his guest washes the dishes. He is touched. It's almost 8 o'clock. The girl is busy washing the dishes. Kanji realizes how his daily life has changed. He greeted her. The girl turned around. They are happy to see each other again. The heroes went outside. Christina looked at the mountain nature and stars in fascination. Kanji stood distantly and looked around. The guy lights a cigarette. The heroine, without taking her surprised gaze from the sky, calls him. Christina is surprised to notice that there is a moon in this world too. Kanji realizes that there is a moon in her world too. They talk about how bad it would be without moonlight at night. The boy, respectfully calling the moon, notes that it does its job well. The girl is surprised by how respectfully Kanji speaks of the moon. He notes that the respected moon is in its waxing phase today. Christina asks Kanji why they have such respect for the moon. The hero explains that there are many legends associated with the moon in Japan. Kanji looks at the girl with affection, not taking her rapturous gaze from the sky. He felt awkward from not understanding the reason for the delight, and he suggests lighting fireworks, which Christina hears about for the first time. The hero went into the house to get fireworks, and when he returned, he told her about his intentions to light them when Honami arrived, and how many he had left. The girl once again asks what fireworks are. Kanji smiles and shows her a package of fireworks. The girl looks at him with wide eyes and surprise. The hero brings one firework to the flame of a candle and asks to watch carefully. Christina watches with interest. The fireworks go off, sparks fly in all directions. The girl screams in fear. Kanji remarks how amazing it is. The guy holds a lit firework in his hand. Christina comes closer and looks in amazement at the flying sparks. The heroine sadly looks at the dying fireworks, not understanding why everything ended. Kanji shows the pack, noting that there are still many left, and invites her to try it herself. Christina is delighted. Holding 2 lit fireworks in both hands, she begins to spin around quickly, talking about how beautiful it is and how it looks like magic. Kanji is taken aback that the girl is so enthusiastic about playing with fire and can set her yukata on fire. The girl dances happily with the lights when suddenly a snake-like mixture on the ground lights up. Christina is shocked. Kanji laughs. Sitting under the starry sky, he looks at her with affection. Watching the fire burn out, the guy looks up and looks at Christina. Kanji hands the girl a firework. She sadly asks if it is the last one and lights it. This is their moment of happiness. Having lost, you understand what happiness is. Together they are a girl from another world and a farmer who quit his job as an employee. 2 people who were not supposed to meet each other, the heroes lost in thought, sewed together, just like these fireworks. Kanji recalls the past moments. It was the last peaceful night with the night girl. The next morning it started raining heavily. It's raining heavily. 3 black cars are parked near a container with a door. Honami comes in and thanks for waiting. 3 hours before. The farmer complains about the endless rain. The girl does not understand why rain is bad for the farm. Kanji explains that the harvest depends on the weather, and too much rain will negatively affect the harvest, and therefore the profit. The guy says that according to the weather forecast, it will rain all week. Surprised that it will take so long, Christina asks to explain what a forecast is. Kanji tells her about satellites. She doesn't understand anything, but admires the incredible science. The connection on the laptop was lost. The phone suddenly rang. The farmer picked up the phone. It was Honami. She said that the consideration of the case of the night girl from another world has advanced. Shocked by this news, the guy asks about the reasons for the rush. During the conversation, Honami explains that at the meeting with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, half of them believed that she was from another world, but some want to see for themselves. Also, because of Christina's spitting image of a European, the officials need proof that she has no bad intentions. The heroes looked at each other questioningly. Honami promises to come soon and tell everything in detail. the connection suddenly breaks. Hanami's signal is out of range. The girl asks, upset about what is happening. Kanji explains that she may be a carrier of unknown viruses and microbes, since her body is from another world. Perplexed, Christina thinks about the viruses in her body, while the farmer reassures her that it is only a possibility. Inspired and jumping up abruptly, she compares herself to the adventurer Ricardo. Kanji is perplexed. The night tells a tale in which the adventurer Ricardo and his crew, having arrived on an unknown island and met people there, began to die. Returning to the mainland, the deaths did not stop. Kanji, realizing that it was a pandemic, asks not to continue and invites them to drink tea. At the table, the guy looks worriedly at the worried girl. He notes that in the 2 weeks they have lived together, nothing strange has happened. Kanji assures that she will only undergo a simple examination and tell her story, and since she is a special case for this country, they may even give her a separate apartment in the city. The guy cheers up Christina, saying that he will visit her. The upset girl reminds him that he allowed her to stay and work on his farm. Kanji hesitates. Replacing sadness with a smile and turning everything into a joke, the girl thinks about how before, in her nightly life, she moved forward despite everything, but here there is no use for nights. She believes that living like this is like being dead, to which Kanji objects, recalling stories about her nightly exploits. The guy suddenly jumps up and insistently asks Christina not to talk about herself as if she feels dead, also saying that he believes in her incredible stories and respects her. Christina, with wide open eyes, listens in surprise. Not understanding the girl's smirks, Kanji demands an explanation. The knight explains, talking about the interesting way he tries to comfort her. They laughed. Kanji joked about his tactlessness towards the noble knight. Outside, the rain continues to pour. The clock shows 10 minutes to 11. Looking at each other romantically, Kanji assures them that everything will be fine soon. At this time, a car rushes towards the house in the pouring rain. Hearing sounds coming from outside, they both turn around, thinking that Hunami has finally arrived. People start to rush into the house, and the heroes happily greet the guests. Looking at Kanji Street, he sees a crowd of people in protective suits and gas masks. Joy gives way to surprise and incomprehension. Hanami comes out and says that she came to take the farmer with her. Kanji reflects on how people stop when they encounter misunderstandings, but time always continues to pass. The employees report that the roads to Mitsuyama are blocked. The object under investigation is ready. They demand that the communications be jammed until the knight is taken away. The heroes look at Hanami in confusion. The men in suits state that this case is under the jurisdiction of many ministries of Japan and talk about their intentions to take Christina under their control. Kanji yells at Hanami, demanding to know what is going on and why this is so unexpected. She explains that it is unexpected for her as well, explaining that Japan has been slow to make such decisions in the past, citing examples of other pandemics, and assuring him that the government will compensate him for all losses. Christina asks the guy that they are government employees, and she will have to go with them. Kanji tries to calm the girl down, saying that they need to figure it out to the end, but Hanami interrupts him, explaining that they are being driven not only for prevention, but for something else. Hanami talks about the increasing number of natural disasters around the world that have no scientific explanation, noting that the most recent case was recorded in Europe, which is now causing all public utilities there to be out of service. The heroes listen questioningly. The employee explains that the information is secret, and she will not reveal all the details, adding that the international organization was interested in the video with Christina. Kanji realized he understood everything. The guy asks about the involvement of magic, to which Hanami explains, speaking about the fact of the girl's extraterrestrial origin, which in itself can lead to various assumptions. She notes that the main thing is to prevent an epidemic, comparing it to a science fiction film. Hanami explains that this is all real, and that they need to take Christina and conduct an examination, assuring that she will be safe there. Kanji protests. He wants to discuss everything first. Full of confidence, the girl shields the farmer with her hand and declares her intention to voluntarily go for examination. Kanji addresses her excitedly. Christina explains that she understands that she must follow the laws of this world, saying that nothing bad will happen to her there. Hanami thanks her for understanding. Laughing maliciously, the employee adds that Kanji will also have to go for an examination, explaining that he and Christina will be placed in different rooms. The guy is shocked. He knew that he would have to go, but he did not think that so soon The girl knight is happy with this news. Hanami expresses her regret. Kanji thanks for the compensation but does not want to give up his farmland and asks to postpone his departure. The employee categorically states that the decision has already been made at the national level and this is out of the question. Intriguingly, she adds that she, Yao-san, and the courier who delivered the underwear will also be isolated. Remembering, the guy says in surprise that their meeting with Yao and the courier was fleeting. Hanami explains that after that they came into contact with a lot of other people. The employee explains that 236 people involved in the contact chain are now isolated in their homes, explaining to the guy what the anti-epidemic work consists of. Having understood everything, Kanji asks to leave them with Christina in one room. The guy insistently begs to settle them together, explaining that the girl is from another world, and it will be hard for her to be alone. The girl, remembering his persuasion not to feel dead, casts aside her doubts, goes out to the employees, and declares that she is a knight. Calming Kanji, the girl says that she can take care of herself and wants to see the city and try city food, adding that helping with the housework is boring. She assures that everything will be fine with her, but the guy does not believe it. He understands for himself that she can't lie. Kanji, Christina, and Hanami go to the hospital. Finding herself in the city, the girl mentally addresses Kanji, saying that when he took her to the city, he explained that it was not really a city, and finding herself in a large metropolis, she is amazed by this world. In the research center, in her thoughts, she realizes that not much time has passed since they were separated in Kanji, but she does not stop thinking about him, and she is completely fine. Walking down the long corridor, Christina decides that she can't hold back any longer. She approaches her room, numbered A25. As she enters, she looks around in surprise, thinking to herself that she still has some pride left, as she is a knight from the kingdom of Uraid. It's just after 5 o'clock. Christina is standing in the middle of her room. There's a knock on the door. 3 employees of the center appear on the threshold and politely greet the girl. The employees explain that the 3 of them will look after her, to which the night girl replies that she can handle it herself. Bowing respectfully, the employees apologize, claiming that this is impossible. Embarrassed, Christina asks not to show such respect to herself, asking about where Kanji is. The workers report that the farmer is also here, but in a different detention center. The girl does not understand why in this case it was necessary to travel in different cars. Having not received any answers from them, because it is prohibited by the rules, the knight understands that it will be problematic for her to communicate with them. The workers note the possible fatigue of their patient and ask her to undergo a simple examination. Christina recalls Kanji's stories about how he himself regularly undergoes it and that it is unpleasant to take blood with a syringe. Noticing this, the workers ask if everything is okay. The girl confidently agrees. They promise to bring her dinner after the procedures are over. Thoughts about the upcoming dinner fill her with happiness. The girl is handed a cup for tests and asked to fill it with urine up to the red mark. The girl looks puzzled. She asks in surprise that she needs to go straight into it and what it is for. They explain to her that they need to determine her general health condition from a urine test. The employees hand the girl a glass and offer their help in this matter. Christina is completely confused. Sitting on the toilet with a glass in her hands, the girl just can't cope with the task. On the 3rd day of their stay at the examination center, where a meeting is held in Tokyo to review the report on Christina from Mitsuyama Village, it is emphasized that her family consists of a father, mother, and an older brother. The speaker talks about the scant information available about the kingdom of Uraid, about the daily tests of her blood and urine, in which nothing special was found. Dwelling on the question of magic, he claims that it is impossible to say for sure, since the girl simply gets confused in the names of vegetables, so the research must be continued. A test using 3D thermography revealed that the ignition phenomenon violates the laws of physics and cannot be explained scientifically. The audience exclaimed enthusiastically. Some noted that this was true magic and the girl was really from another world. Some believed that many questions remained and research should be continued. Continuing about the magic of healing, the speaker assured that the analysis on mice had yielded results, but the data analysis was not yet complete. The meeting participants excitedly speak about what needs to be done next. The speaker interrupts the indignation by adding that there was an interesting detail in the girl's statement. This is the adventurer Ricardo. I tell the story about Ricardo. The speaker leads to the fact that a catastrophe has occurred in the country. Everyone starts speaking out in panic. Someone talks about the plague. Someone demands that the examination methods be tightened. Someone is worried that the girl may be a carrier of unknown microbes. The girl is compared to a witch. There is a knock, and the staff enters Christina's room and brings her lunch. The girl is delighted with the look of the ordered pasta. Admiring the amazing smell and wishing her a pleasant appetite, Christina notes that this is the only pleasant thing in this place. Having tasted the first spoonful of paste, the girl is shocked by the refined taste. They tell her about the name and composition of the dish, remembering the tomatoes. Christina notes that Kanji added other spices to this dish. Memories flooded her. Remembering Kanji and how he was amazed at how much Christina could eat, she remembers that this was the first dish they cooked together, as well as many others in the future. Nostalgic. She remembers punching sweet, fresh vegetables at the farm and insistently telling Kanji that he was responsible for seeing her naked. He agreed to take on this responsibility. Christina embarrassedly tried to explain to him that he probably did not see her as a woman, to which he was distracted by phone calls. The girl asks the employees of the center about how Kanji is doing there. Suddenly, another person enters the room and tells the girl that he has to leave her alone for a while. Christina doesn't mind. She replies that she will take care of the food in their absence. On the 4th day of hospitalization, the girl is fenced off with a thick curtain. To her bewilderment, they answer that by order of the management, she must now be in this part of the team and begin routine tests. While studying healing magic, Christina realizes that these are not the same mice that were before, which is noted by an employee. When asked why they replaced the mice, the girl does not receive an answer. The girl is scanned, and sensors are attached to her entire body. Thinking only about dinner, the researchers explain that because of tomorrow's examination of the intestines and stomach, there will be no dinner today, to which Christina reacts with confusion. The 5th and 6th days pass. The girl continues to be examined on various devices. Day 7 of the research, Kanji is asked if he will eat anymore. In another room, a tired Christina thinks that she is not here for their entertainment. It's almost 3:30 in the morning. Christina is sitting on the bed and can't sleep. On the 10th day in the morning, the girl's guardians visit her, wish her good morning, noting that the girl again slept poorly at night and offer to take another blood test. Showing her pricked hand, Christina remembers how it was the first time, how she was scared of this needle, how it hurt her, and she could not relax. She asked to spare her. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they come to the girl and ask if she has finished eating. Christina has not even touched the food, she only drank juice. She explains this by the lack of appetite and thanks for the food. The nurse asks the knight to listen to her. She says that the tests are different from the usual and the girl is in good health. Christina says that she has said this before, and more than once. The employee categorically says that the girl does not understand that if she does not sleep and eat normally, the tests will continue. They offer her to change her pillow to a softer one, but Christina droops. She is scared. She tells the nurses that a couple of days ago she had a dream in which Kanji and Hanami got sick and suffered because of her, which made her feel terrible. Christina begs to tell her how Kanji is doing. They refuse, explaining it is the rules, which makes the girl furious, and she gets up on the bed. In a rage, she declares that she has had enough and she is leaving. A scuffle begins. They try to hold her back. Knocking down one of the employees with food, Christina looks at what she has done in horror. The employee assures her that she is fine and asks not to worry. The girl asks for forgiveness. In the staff room, one of the nurses is talking to someone on the phone. It's just after 8. Christina is exhausted, lying in her bed and staring blankly at the ceiling. There's a knock at the door. The nurse who was dropped by Christina that time comes in. She asks for forgiveness, but the employee asks not to worry about it and says that she came on important business. Her sister hands her the phone and says that she has an important call. Taking the phone in her hands, the girl realizes that she knows what it is and speaks loudly into the phone, calling Kanji. Kanji, moving the phone away from his ear, asks why she is screaming so much. The girl enthusiastically screams into the receiver. Happy about how long it has been since she heard him, she is asked to be quieter. The guy points out that it's only been 10 days, which the girl agrees with. Kanji says that time drags on so long, sitting here in a small room doing absolutely nothing. Not understanding what small room, the farmer says, because her ward is large and spacious. The guy understands that she has another ward and asks about her health, to which Christina replies that everything is great. The girl tells in detail how she likes it here, about how delicious the food is and how she can sleep during lunch, which the employee is happy to hear. Kanji understands what the girl really feels. She wants to escape from this terrible cold place. She wants him to take her away from here. The guy listens silently and asks him to forgive her, to which the girl is surprised and cries, admitting that she can't lie at all. She is sad that because of her, Kanji also ended up in the hospital. The farmer asks if she saw the moon today. Surprised, the girl said that she had not looked out the window because her curtains had been closed all this time. The sister emphasized that today was a beautiful full moon. Christina jumped up, pulled the curtains apart, saw a large, beautiful moon. Looks at the sky with admiration. Kanji agrees. He asks about how she likes the moon compared to her world. Unexpectedly, the girl says that she is delighted with the local toilets. Everyone except Christina burst out laughing, not understanding why she suddenly decided to talk about such a trifle, to which the girl angrily declared that she thought they were amazing. The knight no longer remembered what they talked about after that, but she was amused. That night she slept well and had a dream in which she and Kanji were adventurers traveling the world. But unlike Ricardo, no one was hurt, and the girl considered this a happy ending known only to her. At the end of August, 3 weeks later, the surveys were over. The group of epidemiologists in the village was recalled. Kanji returned to his homeland, looking at what had happened to him in surprise. All his fields and beds were overgrown with weeds and grass. Looking at all this, the farmer reflects on how he always conscientiously carried out his duties, and this is an example of what would have happened if he had not been so diligent. He added that apparently a typhoon had passed through here, which made him completely despondent. All the Jerusalem artichokes were knocked down by the hurricane, and in despair, Kanji realizes that if he had known that they would be gone for so long, he would have made the stakes thicker, or cut the stems. Panickingly looking at the remaining roots, he realizes that not all is lost, and also realizes that now is the time to gather the summer harvest, but he is upset and despairing. Scientific excerpt about Jerusalem artichoke. Walking to another field, he sees the same thing. More than half of the harvest is ruined. The sun is high in the sky. Kanji lies down on the ground and lights a cigarette. He thinks that it's not bad after all, because if scientists sprayed chemicals here, he wouldn't be able to grow for a few more years. Looking at his house, he tries to think of it as mercy. Walking into the garden, he saw and was stunned. The vegetable garden was completely destroyed. The farmer fell to his knees and despaired. Only the weeds survived. Having spoken about the spirit of the weeds, Kanji leaned over the beds dejectedly. Suddenly, seeing the surviving ginger, the guy began to jump enthusiastically and praise his surviving ginger. Christina had already arrived and was standing behind. The girl said optimistically that Kanji looked much better today. The farmer apologized for his stupid jokes. The guy turned around but saw nothing behind him, confident, and decided to continue to fight against all this. The next day, new circumstances arose. Kanji is driving a car. It is necessary to identify a virus that does not exist in the world, a difficult task. In order to identify the pathogen, it was decided to conduct research involving all hospitals, universities, and research centers in Japan. Kanji searches for Honami. Having met Honami, she greets the guy happily. Excitedly, he says that there is no time for pleasantries because the test results have arrived. Out of breath, Kanji sits down next to the girl. She apologizes for not being able to come to his discharge from the hospital. The guy regrets. He did not expect that he would have to return here so soon. It's the beginning of the second. Honami explains that Christina is no different from the people from their world. In other words, Christina is a reasonable person. The guy doesn't understand if she's from another world after all. Honami explains that theoretically, the place and time she came from is in another parallel reality. This world is similar to Earth, but still different. The farmer finds it hard to believe this sci-fi scenario. Theoretical physicists have been discussing this for years, and Honami offers 3 reasons to believe it is true. Firstly, scientists found signs that the knight had chickenpox or lichen as a child, but during the investigation, another disease was discovered, which led to the following conclusions. The girl was confirmed to have parasites. Surprised, Kanji assumed it was from the manure, considering this conclusion to be typical for a farmer. Honami explained that before the war, most of the Japanese population had them. Continuing her story, the girl notes that in ancient times, farmers used their feces as fertilizer, which in turn increased fertility, but at the same time caused parasites. They were detected in Christina, The guy confirms that she always liked to eat raw vegetables. Scientists have given up on the study of magic. Honami explains that many confirm that orcs, goblins, and others have long since died out, however. As for magic, she calls the most interesting one the body enhancement magic, also saying that it is beyond the understanding of science and scientists have simply given up. They recall how the knight smashed a wall with his hand in anger, and the girl notes that he was a good man for being able to survive living with her. Kanji fearfully thinks how good it is that he did not do anything strange. Walking down the hospital corridor, Honami explains that no country can cope with pathogens from another world, since they do not know how the body reacts to conventional treatment methods. In this regard, it was decided to release the female knight from the hospital. Kanji asks if they did the right thing. Honami replies that the fact that he is okay is wonderful. The guy yelled at her, saying that he had to stay there for 3 weeks, when she was discharged after only a week. Proving the need for such measures, she talks about the case of the SARS outbreak in 2009 and explains that such measures were developed specifically for such cases. Approaching the A25 isolation ward, they are met by a nurse who invites them to follow her. Kanji excitedly asks the nurse about Christina's condition, to which he is told that she looks healthy on the outside, but is very tired. She goes to the control panel and opens the doors. Honami is delighted by such protective measures. Entering the ward, the guy says that it is much bigger than the one he was placed in. Hearing a familiar voice, the girl turns around and gets out of bed. They met again and were happy to see each other. They look at each other happily. Honami jumps up happily, delighted by this loving moment of reunion. Kanji asks where her seriousness went. Christina laughs happily at this. The girl happily clarifies with her nurse that since they came to her, they are done with the examination. The nurse confirms, saying that tomorrow she will be transferred to the general ward and asks her to rest, no matter how much she does not want to. After starting to talk about the rules once again, Christina interrupts the nurse, saying that seeing her without a mask made her feel much better. Kanji is glad to see that she is in a good mood. The girl assures that she feels fine, praises the local food, and wants to stretch her legs. Seeing her thinking with embarrassment, Honami and the nurse hurry to leave them alone. Kanji is confused, left alone with Christina, awkward silence. He starts to speak, but the girl interrupts him, saying that she is happy that he is okay. Seeing how embarrassed she is, the guy asks her to be herself and not hold back. Guessing that he already understands everything, he tells her how hard it was for her here. All this time, she thought about her fallen comrades, about her duty as a knight, which she failed to fulfill. She calls herself pathetic and asks Kanji to scold her. He took her hand. Blushing and closing her eyes, Christina realized that she had not felt the warmth of another person for a very long time. Holding her hand, the guy calms her down, saying that he understands how lonely she was here and that everything will be fine. Christina thinks that the problem of loneliness is not important to her, and she does not need such an order. She wants to go home. She jerked her hand away and screamed that she wanted to go home, she wanted to get away from here, she wanted to go back to her mom, dad, and brother. As she cried, she realized how annoying it was that he treated her like a child all the time, laughed and acted strangely, and thought that she hated all this and hated him. Kanji silently hugs her and presses her to his chest. Having told her that he would be with her, she stopped crying for a second and started bawling again, pounding her fists on him, demanding that he not joke with her like that and tell her what he wanted from her. The guy takes Christina again and hugs her, who keeps crying. Returning to the room and hearing what Kanji said to the girl, he grins slyly and plans to make him take responsibility for the night girl. The head nurse burst into tears at what she saw, saying that she had failed in her role as a nurse, seeing everything that had happened. Honami encouraged her, saying that she had worked hard to fulfill her duty. The next day in the new ward, Honami comes to visit the girl, asking how she is doing in the new environment. Christina replies that it is easier for her to spend time here, and from the corridor, she can hear the voices of children running along the corridors. Honami looks around the room questioningly. The girl is embarrassed. Understanding everything, she explains that Kanji went home because he is worried about his plants, which makes Honami think about how cute Chris is. The girl found out that she and Honami will go to a hotel, even though she doesn't know what kind of place it is. She is happy that they will be there together. Telling about the super VIP service, Honami throws himself on her neck, saying how much he loves her. The girl from the ministry says that since she is an adult and has a lot of her own things to do, they cannot always be together. To which Christina replies that she needs to find a groom. Discouraged by the fact that she is 30 years old and alone, she talks about further options for the night girl. Honami explains that she can stay in Tokyo and help with magic studies and live on her own, or she can choose another option. Late September, Kanji has been working hard to restore his farm for a month now. He wonders why he was willing to live with the night girl. Sitting in the hospital, Honami reminds the guy that she told him about the virus that could be in Christina's body when she came to visit him at the farm. She asks if he was scared, to which he definitely agrees. He explains that it was hard for him to believe it back then, because they lived together and everything was fine, clapping Honami on the shoulder. He hopes that Christina will be fine with her. She doesn't understand, because she thought that Kanji would take the girl with him, but he replies that she shouldn't live with a 30-year-old farmer. Honami seriously demands to know why he told Chris that he would be with her, calling him a liar and looking at the people in the hospital. She will explain how many people suffered because of such misunderstandings. Kanji does not consider himself a liar and says that he meant that if she needs him, he will be there. Kanji sits on the veranda of his house with a cigarette, a can of beer and peas, looking at the sky. While reading his morning prayers, he suddenly distinctly hears a voice asking him what he will have for breakfast. Looking around, he assures himself that he has definitely heard it. An image from the past appeared in his mind, where a girl asked him to call himself Chris. He never called her. Kanji went to farm. While picking vegetables, he has an image of Chris standing with her back to him. While working in the field, he fantasizes about meeting her, sees her images in his head. The phone rang. When he picks up the phone, he hears Honami yelling, dissatisfied that he is not answering. He makes the excuse that he just got into the truck and learns that Honami will be visiting Yao tomorrow because the compensation issue has not been resolved. She also wants to apologize because on the same day he spoke to Chris on the phone, Yao became ill due to poor health and was hospitalized. Kanji heard about it. Saying that the guy had already apologized to him more than once, he was going to go with Honami and asked how Christina was doing. Immediately realizing that he is worried about her and asks if she will go with them, Honami asks if he has changed his mind. Refusing, he listens that the trip is business, and she will not be brother Chris with her. Honami, planning a surprise, disconnects. Honami arranges for them to meet. Kanji, realizing that the night girl will not be there, thinks about how he will meet her at the monthly checkups, but is nervous and does not know what to talk about or where to start. Inspired, he imagines bringing her European clothes and taking her to a luxury beauty salon, after which he feeds her curry at Daikanyama. Suddenly, he felt someone's presence. Turning around, he does not recognize the girl in the big hat and dress. Kanji looks at the girl carefully. It is Christina. She raises her head and calls him by name. Honami, who was watching this from the car, smiles romantically. The farmer is completely perplexed. He can't believe his eyes. A girl in heels, a dress and a big hat. She shines in the sun. Kanji is happy to welcome her to his solar farm. There are many people in the world, as well as many stories. Chris apologizes for appearing so suddenly. She realizes that she surprised him by talking about her outfit. For Kanji, it seems strange. He corrects himself and says that it suits her very well, asking if it was Honami's idea. The girl, smiling, notes that she knew he would understand everything right away. Chris says that she owes a lot to Honami, because she told her a lot about this world, including that there was not always peace here, that there were wars, noting that her generation also had to go through a lot. The girl tries to explain what she understood from the stories about her native kingdom, about parallel worlds and the time axis, saying that she still didn't understand anything. Kanji agreed, and they laughed. The farmer tries to find Honami, thinking that she brought her here. Chris shouts, saying that he misunderstands everything and that she decided to come to him herself because she wants to be with him a little longer. Kanji, after listening, understands that he has had problems on the farm since she appeared here. Chris does not understand why he is talking about this only now, and like a true knight, she is ready to beg for forgiveness on her knees. Suddenly, a gust of wind tears the girl's hat off, but Kanji manages to catch it at the last moment. She apologizes. He carefully places the hat on her head and says that there is no need to apologize. It is better for her to help him on the farm and with the cooking for a longer time. The girl says that it's not fair and asks him to call her Chris again. Kanji hopes that they will get along again. On this day, they remembered their first meeting and many other things that happened to them. They remembered how Chris proposed to be his bride and many other things. Kanji realized that there were unpleasant moments, But now she finally came back to him. Seiki Kanji, Christina Melvis, Izawa Honami. Thus ended the first act of the farmer's life with the female knight from another world. Poster. Meanwhile, in another world, in the kingdom of Chris, it is raining. Between Uraid and Mosengate, there is a black forest. The knight, who is called a hero in the kingdom of Uraid, searches for Christina in the forest. The blue-eyed, white-haired god of war in scarlet armor and a golden spear is Sir Bartholomeus. Imperial Mage Louise asks him to return and finish his search as the rain begins to intensify. He declines her offers, telling her to return alone, and rides on. Riding through the forest and rain, the knight assures himself that Chris is alive because she has more honor than anyone else. This is Christina's brother, the hero of the Kingdom of Uraid, Bartholomeus. Kingdom of Uraid, morning, knights fight barbarians. In the northern quarter of Mosengate Castle, the exhausted warriors do not want to believe that the castle will fall so quickly. They realize that even if one of the 5 messengers reaches the capital, they will have to wait 2 days for consumption. The knights were in despair, but no one was going to give up without a fight, because behind them was the Kingdom of Uraid, where their dear people lived. In the kingdom, friends, families, and people who can no longer fight, all they can do is pray for their soldiers. An adult knight, screaming that he will die here, leads everyone. Suddenly something breaks through the fortress wall, and it shatters into pieces. The warrior looks at a huge hole in the wall. No one understands what happened. Many were buried under rubble. A giant barbarian appears in the rift, breaking through the wall with his huge mace. The giant grabbed the commander and squeezed him in his hand. The knight was breathing his last. The number of barbarians rushing into the rift was already about 5,000. In his last seconds, the knight cried out to God and asked him to save them. Suddenly he heard a fierce roar. Something broke through the crowds of barbarians towards the rift, throwing back everyone in its path. A fierce knight on horseback chopped down everyone who came his way. Seeing him mow down crowds with his spear, the surviving barbarians retreated in fear. Riding his horse into the rift, he came face to face with a giant. They looked at each other and resolutely rushed into the attack. On the run, he cuts the giant with a spear blow, winning the victory and managing to save everyone. Thus, he became a hero and the god of war at the age of 23. Bartholomeus apologized for being late. The next day, 8,000 soldiers arrived in the city, and all the barbarians were exterminated. The kingdom chanted the hero's name. Addressing the savior, the commander of the knights thanks him for saving him, and tells him that his sister Christina has gone with a message to the capital. He is glad that she is safe. However, Christina never made it to the kingdom, where no one knows her now. 2 months later, the kingdom recognized her as a deserter. The knight recalls how, as a child, his sister wanted to follow in his footsteps. He was against it, but her feelings were important to her parents. Remembering how young Chris pounded her chest and said that she wanted to become a knight and protect the country like her brother, no matter what the woman, he realized that he began to respect her decision. Even then, he understood that on this knightly path, Christina's life could be interrupted. Having rejected this thought, he decided that he could not accept it. A knight sits at the bar and asks the bartender to pour him more ale. As he drinks more and more, images of his sister appear in his head. Suddenly, he hears a tiny sorceress behind him say that he looks tired. The girl greets the knight, to which he gives a rude response. Angry, she says that she was worried and asks the bartender to pour her the same. Taking a large mug of ale, she realizes that no matter how hard she tries, it seems to not be decreasing. The girl says that she heard about the situation with Christina. The sorceress tells that the court is worried about his long absence, and not wanting to listen to this, the knight is going to leave. Several drunks block his way, intending to start a fight and calling his companion a child. Enduring provocations from the bully, the girl sees Bartholomeus leaving. She tries to stop him, because she didn't say the main thing. Hearing the little girl say his name, everyone in the tavern began to look at the knight, some recognizing him as the very hero of the country. The bearded drunkard, not recognizing him as a war hero, tells him to stop and calls him an impudent boy. He says he supposedly knows the whole truth about him. He says that then, in the castle, Bartholomeus deliberately left the Majesty's guard and ran to the rescue of his sister, who in turn cowardly fled to another country, noting that this happens when you let a woman become a knight. In a moment, all the offenders are already flying in the air and screaming for salvation. Not wanting to listen to this nonsense, the girl throws everyone into the air with her magic, saying that Christina is her close friend. She says that it was Christina who helped her at school when everyone was bullying her. She firmly declares that she will not allow anyone to talk like that about her or about the hero of this country. Bartholomeus asks the sorceress to stop. The drunks who are thrown in begin to understand who they have run into. This girl is a person with the greatest magical power in the kingdom. Louise introduces herself as a young genius spellcaster. The offenders, frightened, begin to shift the blame for what happened to each other. The magic got out of control, everything fell to the floor with a clatter. The sorceress hurried to stop the night. She cries out that Christina is alive. Bartholomeus stops and is ready to listen to her. Louise takes the knight to the kingdom's Institute of Magical Research, saying that she has received His Majesty's permission, and asks him to keep what he sees inside a secret. They enter a large hall where, on many shelves, there are even more vessels with blazing fire. Bartholomeus asks what this is. The sorceress explains that the lights of their lives, created from spirit stones, are kept here. She takes out the light of Christina's spirit and shows that it still burns brightly. She says that's why she thinks Christina is alive. Meanwhile, at Kanji's farm, the night girl is enjoying herself while sitting in the bathtub. Poster. In the room, Hanami is talking about how great she is while throwing beer cans around and sitting on the floor. Kanji points out that she has been drinking too much. Drunk Hanami, not understanding her condition, asks if he will make Christina happy. The guy leaves to check if there is enough wood in the stove. He responds by saying that he will work hard to make Christina happy. Angry at her loneliness, Hanami jumps up and gets mad that an 18-year-old blonde is going to be a bride, and she is not. She decides to text her college boyfriends and former colleagues to bring all the anger of the singles to Kanji. Throwing wood into the stove, the guy asks Christina how she likes the water. The girl says with pleasure that everything is fine and tells how, living in a hotel and a hospital, she had to be content with just a shower, and in a hot bath all the fatigue goes away. Kanji addresses her respectfully and asks her not to fall asleep in the bathroom like before. The girl screams, reminding him to call her Chris. She tells the farmer that she really liked the city's infrastructure. Christina tells how she saw stairs that move by themselves, buildings higher than mountains, transport flying in the sky. There was something amazing everywhere. But what impressed her most was the lights of the city at night. She described it as if she were in a dream. The girl notes that only a few people can use magic, but at the same time, everyone can use the benefits of science. Listening to her, Kanji remembers how Hanami actually wanted to use magic, but the farmer reminds that it is impossible to use magic in their world. Chris does not agree with this. She hurries to see if he has seen spirits and tells about her brother, with whom they shared magic and now he can use it. The night girl believes that even if Kanji sees the spirit, he will not be able to use magic, saying that it is impossible for him. He smirks at her logic and advises her to get out of the hot water quickly, so that she does not get sick. Hearing a rumble in the house, the guy runs inside. At the house, he sees a naked Chris holding a drunk Hanami, saying that she hit her head. She apologizes to Kanji for peeing herself when she was a child, to which he tells her not to worry about it, thinking that translation magic is a good thing. Realizing that she is naked, the girl drops Hanami, jumps up, and covers herself. The farmer, embarrassed, covers his face and says that she got it all wrong, because he thought that she had passed out in the bathroom again. Realizing that everything has returned to normal, he picks up his phone and sees a bunch of new angry messages from students and former colleagues. This is the result of the envious efforts of Hanami, who had already fallen asleep on the table. It's morning on the farm, the birds are singing. Breakfast is already on the table. Chris enjoys a delicious omelet. The guy is surprised to see how deftly she eats with chopsticks. Not understanding the surprised looks, she asks what's wrong. Kanji says he's surprised she learned to use chopsticks. Christina says it's not surprising, because she's going to live here. Noticing how she was chomping, the guy laughs, thinking that her manners remained like a child's. He hurries to see if Hanami has woken up. The girl, leaving the food, rushed after her. Entering the room, she sees that she is still sleeping. Christina began to scream, scolding her that she has already come to wake her up for the 4th time, suffering from a hangover. Hanami asks to let her sleep a little more. The guy listening to this smiles, realizing that the girl night has not changed at all. Hanami wakes up with a headache, saying she drank too much yesterday. Kanji asks if she remembers yesterday. Chris hands her a cup of tea. Thanking for the tea, she helps herself to food. The guy reminds her of the meeting with Yao at 9 o'clock, which she asks not to worry about. Kanji, seeing how greedily and quickly she ate everything, says that she doesn't change, and Chris notes that it looked delicious and she'll try it herself sometime. The farmer thanks Honami for teaching Christina so much. Recalling the previous evening, she notes that she left him and Kanji alone when she went to bed. Honami jumps up and jumps to hug the girl. Falling to the floor with her, the knight thinks that she is still drunk. The guy decides not to interfere. She asks Christina if they became sisters after that night. Spitting out his tea in surprise, Kanji asks his sister to stop talking nonsense. The girl, confused, asks what the word sister means. Honami tries to ask the girl if they had sex and tell her everything about it. Covering her ears, the guy yells at his sister, saying that they didn't have anything. In that case, according to Honami, it's even worse. It means Kanji doesn't see her as a woman. Chris continues to not understand what the conversation is about. The guy remains humiliated, ly silent. Worriedly, he explains that his sister got it all wrong and the girl means a lot to him, but he wouldn't call it love because Chris is from another world and they have a different culture, plus she's young and he's more of her guardian than her lover. Honami cheerfully tells them not to worry about her age because in order to do some procedures, they registered Christina as a 20-year-old adult. Kanji is shocked and demands to explain everything to him. Explaining that the night girl came to Japan from Europe, the sister shows the special permanent residence visa that was made for Christina. The farmer asks if this will lead to an international conflict, to which Honami demands that she not interfere in the affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She calls it a legal forgery of citizenship and notes that the girl's very existence is an important event for the world. The guy remembers his visit to Yao. Honami believes that understanding the principles of magic can change the world. Kanji waits for the girls outside. Looking at the time, he worries that they are late for Yao when suddenly they come out, asking if he has been waiting for them for long. The girls showed up in suits and asked if Kanji was going to go in casual clothes. He asked for a few minutes and went to pass on. They all came to Yao together, finding him at the door of his company. He is surprised to see Saeki. Honami hands him the offering. The old man doesn't understand what's going on. Kanji explains that a lot has happened. Poster. Walking inside and sitting at the table, Yao says that it was not necessary to dress up like that for him, but that the guy completely agrees. Seeing Honami's stern face, he understands that he said too much. Studying the documents, the old man is surprised that the guys know someone from the ministry, to which Kanji says that he met one at the university. After reading the information, Yao notes that compensation would be very welcome. Honami bows respectfully. He tells how, after returning from the hospital, he looked for money to borrow from the bank because his vegetable supply business was stopped for 3 weeks, and during this time he could have gone bankrupt. Kanji humorously remarks that he can now find a more profitable buyer for his vegetables, which upsets Yao and he calls him heartless. Everyone laughed at this joke. The guy tells Christina that he helped him a lot, back when the farmer was just starting out. Yao turns to Chris in surprise, saying that he heard a lot from Kanji about a night girl from another world, monsters and magic, comparing this plot to manga. Honami tells the girl what manga is, and reminds her how they read about a dragon. The old man extends his hand to the girl, wanting to forget about what happened and get along in the future. Chris is surprised that handshakes are accepted here. He invites the guests to stay and taste the excellent sushi, to which Kanji says that ordinary apricots will suffice since the company is suffering losses. The knight suddenly stands up, interrupting the conversation. She apologizes for causing them so much trouble. Chris assures everyone that she did not want to disturb the peaceful life of many people. With her appearance, she asks not to forgive her for this, because it contradicts her ideology. She bows her head and respectfully asks for forgiveness. Yao is shocked by what is happening. Noticing how Chris bows, the guy notes that she has practiced this. The old man approaches the girl, puts his hand on her shoulder, and asks her to raise her head. He sees sincerity in the girl and asks the guys for forgiveness for fainting and delaying them. The girls began to calm him down, embarrassed, and the gentleman, bowing, asked to forgive him for being a little angry with them. He emphasizes that as a salesman he should be concerned not only about the company's profits, but about the people who are sincere to him. Yao extends his hands to Christina and simply exchanges a sincere handshake. The girl happily shakes his hand in return. While sitting at the table and eating sushi, the gentleman turns to Kanji, noting that he has found himself a great wife. The guy excitedly justifies himself, explaining that she is not his wife, to which Yao says that it is a matter of time. Three young people stand in front of a traditional Japanese house in the countryside. A car is parked nearby, and the surroundings are calm and rural. One of the girls smiles and waves as she stands by the open door of the car. She says goodbye to the others as she prepares to leave. The young man, slightly confused, says goodbye, standing next to the girl with long blonde hair. Both watch the woman leave, remaining at the entrance to the house. The remaining two silently watch the car drive away. The car drives off down a country road, leaving them alone in front of the house. Kanji, looking ahead with concern, notices that the woman left immediately after finishing the task. The girl with long hair turns to him in surprise. The girl, slightly blushing, asks if this relationship is too cold. She looks puzzled and a little embarrassed. The girl asks with a slight smile if he understands the behavior of the one who just left. Kanji is confused and clearly does not know what to answer. The woman behind the wheel smiles as she continues her journey alone. An inner voice emphasizes that every encounter in life happens by chance. The girl smiles warmly, looking forward with a slight blush on her cheeks. The voiceover suggests that connections between people are born from chance encounters. Kanji and the girl stand in an open space, looking up at the sky with an expression of mild surprise. The voiceover concludes the thought by stating that such a connection is called a miracle. The farmhouse reappears in the frame against a backdrop of mountains and dense trees. Above it, a calm evening sky sets a peaceful mood. Kanji wakes up sitting on the tatami mats in a traditional room, yawning and rubbing his eyes. His appearance and posture betray a sleepy state. The wall clock shows evening time. A worried comment is heard off-screen about how late it has become. From the depths of the house comes a call to cook dinner, addressed to a girl named Chris. Inside the room, there is a sudden noise, as if someone has reacted sharply. Kanji listens in surprise at the silence, noticing the lack of a response. A slight confusion appears on his face. He walks out into the street, slowly walking on the ground in his slippers. His steps sound quiet, emphasizing the general silence around him. Kanji walks out into the courtyard, looking around with a confused expression. He wonders where the girl could have disappeared to. An elderly man in rubber boots stands on the street, leaning forward with his hands clasped behind his back. His expression seems tired, but calm. An elderly man happily calls out to the boy, noticing him in the yard. The boy is surprised by his appearance and asks why he came. An elderly man named Ito Tsugio is shown, who is already 85 years old. Despite his age, he continues to work actively as a farmer. The map of the area is shown. From Ito's house to Saiki's house is 2.4 kilometers. Despite this distance, Ito is their closest neighbor. Kanji scratches his head and asks the old man a question. He asks the reason for his unexpected visit. The old man with a sly smile informs that a blonde foreigner is playing with his dog. His tone sounds slightly mocking and mysterious. A girl with long blonde hair, Chris, happily plays with a dog in the yard of the house. The dog stands on its hind legs, and she laughs and stretches out her hand to him. Kanji chides Chris for leaving without warning and potentially disturbing the neighbor. She laughs and explains that she was just going for a short walk. Tsugio makes a restrained remark, but in his mind he admits that he envies the dog. His face turns red, revealing his hidden sympathy for the girl. Tsugio, with an innocent expression, asks if Chris is the guy's wife. The guy, in a panic, vehemently denies it, blushing and shouting that she is not his wife. An elderly woman named Ito Sumi, 78 years old, appears and apologizes with a smile for their dog's behavior, but Kanji, scratching his head in embarrassment, insists that it is his fault. Chris yells indignantly at the dog who is trying to get under her skirt. Tsugio blushes and looks extremely embarrassed. All the participants of the scene gather in the yard, watching as the girl continues to play with the dog. One of the older people turns to the boy, calling him by name. Sumi smiles and praises the girl, claiming that she will make a great wife. Kanji panics and tries to object, insisting that everyone has misunderstood. Cries of confusion and panic can be heard from inside the house. Someone is shouting about a great angle, while another is asking for help. Kanji restrains the dog, pulling it away from Chris, and calls the dog a pervert. The girl thanks him for his help with a smile, trying to keep the atmosphere light. The dog, as if offended, turns away from the guy, demonstratively ignoring him. Kanji watches this behavior with bewilderment. The dog's name is Sangu, and he is the third generation in a line of dogs bred by the Ito family. His name reflects this family continuity. Everyone stands around the sitting dog, discussing his origins. The voiceover suggests that despite being third generation, he does not seem to be related by blood to his predecessors. Sang-gu again pesters the girl, causing her fear and embarrassment. The voiceover notes that for some unknown reason, the dog obeys only women. Sumi calls Sang-gu to eat, and he runs to the bowl with a joyful bark. Kanji, watching him, is surprised by how energetic he is. Sang-gu carries away his bowl of food, holding it in his teeth and walking forward proudly. Kanji and Chris watch in confusion at this strange action. Sang-gu disappears into the tall grass, taking the food with him. Sumi notes that he has been doing this a lot lately, and Kanji, surprised, asks where he is going. Sumi suggests that the dog has a secret place where he likes to eat. Tsugio confidently adds that Sang-gu most likely hides his food somewhere. Chris suddenly runs ahead, deciding to check where the dog went. Kanji calls out to her in confusion, surprised that she is leaving alone again. Against the backdrop of the evening sky, a view of mountains and forest covered in light fog opens up. The landscape creates a sense of calm and mystery. Kanji walks along a forest path, looking around for Chris, worried about her sudden disappearance. Kanji turns around in surprise when he hears Chris's voice from deep within the forest. She calls out to him, pointing to her location. Kanji asks worriedly if everything is okay. Chris answers yes, but asks him to hurry up and come closer. Kanji stops with a surprised expression, not understanding what exactly is happening. He asks quietly, confused. Kanji is surprised to see Chris squatting next to the bowl the kittens are eating from. She smiles, as she watches the babies, who Sang-gu apparently fed in secret. Chris, watching the kittens eat, marvels at how cute they are. She asks Kanji if she is calling them cats, and he, confused, confirms. Kanji asks in surprise if they are really stray cats. Barking can be heard in the background, catching his attention. Sang-gu sits next to the cloth-covered basket, looking at Kanji intently. The boy is amazed and quietly says the dog's name, realizing that he was taking care of the kittens. Kanji admits with a warm smile that he has changed his mind about Sang-gu, admiring that even a dog can show such concern for defenseless creatures. Sang-gu turns away again, pointedly ignoring Kanji, who laughs with a smile, noting that the dog does this even after praise. Chris sadly asks if the kittens have a mother. Kanji suggests that they were probably just thrown away because their previous owners didn't want them. Kanji notices that Sang-gu is looking at something closely, and he himself looks in the same direction in surprise. He wonders in confusion what is going on. Chris calls out to Kanji in concern, asking what's wrong. The background shows a sharp running sound, indicating sudden movement. Kanji and Sang-gu notice another kitten lying separately in the basket. The moment is accompanied by a glow, emphasizing the importance of the find. Chris asks Kanji if the kitten they found is their mother. The boy looks thoughtful and puzzled. Kanji replies that it is most likely not the mother, but just another of the kittens. He assumes that they are all siblings. Chris strokes the smallest kitten with sympathy, noticing that he is significantly weaker than the others. Kanji and Chris look at the kitten with concern. He is not breathing, and they fear that it is too late. Kanji is furious and desperate. He cannot understand how it was possible to leave the kittens in such a dangerous place. Kanji and Chris fall silent near the basket containing the dead kitten, but then the other kittens begin to meow and cuddle at Kanji's feet. The touching moment brings them closer to the remaining animals, creating a sense of quiet responsibility. Kanji tries to be calm, showing concern and a desire to protect those who are weaker. Sang-gu the dog barks happily, as if expressing approval of Kanji's actions. His mood is a sharp contrast to the recent tense situation. Chris addresses Kanji affectionately, calling him by his first name with warmth for the first time. He lowers his head slightly and answers with a reserved, "Okay." Kanji suggests postponing the burial of the dead kitten for later, covering it with a soft cloth in a basket. The scene is filled with silent sadness and respect for life. Kanji stands with 3 kittens in his arms, holding them to his chest. His face is serious, and his voice is full of determination. He looks at his interlocutor with complete confidence in his decision. The kittens emit soft meows, as if they understand that they are now safe. Kanji and Chris look at each other silently. Their glances meet, reflecting surprise and slight confusion. A faint meowing sound breaks the silence. Chris and Kanji's gaze snaps to the basket. A thin, barely audible voice comes from beneath the fabric. It's one of the kittens, the one they thought was dead, showing signs of life. The girl suddenly pushes Kanji aside, rushing towards the basket. He watches her actions in shock. The girl places her palms over the kitten, emitting a bright glow. Kanji watches in amazement, not understanding what she is doing. Chris holds her hands over the lifeless kitten's body, intensifying the light that emanates from her palms. Behind her, Kanji watches in amazement, clutching the remaining babies to him. The light continues to flow, illuminating everything around her. It's as if Chris is channeling life energy directly into the kitten. It sounds like a thought. Magic in this world doesn't have the same impressive power as in video games. However, the things you can do with healing magic are simple, and even the smallest impact can make a difference. The scene shifts to a veterinary clinic at night. The sign INUI is brightly lit on the facade. The thoughts continue. Magic in this world can only slightly speed up recovery from fatigue or help slightly in the healing of injuries. The next frame captures a sharp, loud, barking echo that carries through the air. Woof, woof, woof. On the veterinarian's table, wrapped in a soft towel, a tiny kitten suddenly makes a sound. He turns out to be alive, despite Kanji and Chris's fears. Chris and Kanji both freeze in surprise as they look at the kitten, their eyes wide open, shocked and delighted by the unexpected miracle. The doctor, looking over his shoulder, reports with surprise that the kitten was on the verge of death, but they somehow managed to save him. The doctor reports that the rest of the kittens are completely healthy. The kittens sit in the basket and meow together. Chris holds Sanga in his arms, beaming with joy. The dog barks happily, expressing his excitement. The doctor, looking at the kittens, asks sympathetically if they were abandoned. Kanji, standing next to Chris, quietly confirms this, sighing heavily. Chris pets one of the kittens with a gentle smile, happily informing them that they are now a month old. She explains that the kitten was most likely weakened by the change in conditions, and was therefore unable to eat. The veterinarian adds that for now, the kitten is only allowed to eat liquid food, as his body is still too weak. Kanji is amazed at how confident the kitten now looks, even though he was dying not long ago. The girl smiles in agreement, agreeing with his words. The doctor explains with a serious expression that in this world medicine is developed, and the medicines are really effective. Thanks to these conditions, even such a tiny life as the life of the kitten they found can be saved. Kanji says with concern in his voice that if they hadn't been there, all the kittens would have probably died. His words make the girl think, and an expression of deep sadness appears on her face. Chris looks in amazement at the kitten who has come to life, who stands up unsteadily and makes a weak voice. The girl tries to catch the meaning of his quiet meowing, as if believing that he is trying to say something. The kitten, overcoming his weakness, cautiously approaches Chrissy and touches her fingers with gratitude. A quiet mental voice clearly sounds in her mind. You saved my life. Chris can't help but cry out Kanji's name, unsure of how to react to what's happening. Sangu watches the scene without moving, making no sound, his expression almost thoughtful. Kanji notices a strange sound and turns around in slight surprise, not understanding what exactly happened. Kanji quickly corrects himself, turning to Sang and apologizing for the forgotten thank you, acknowledging his important help. The dog, seemingly pleased with the attention, continues to bark loudly. Kanji, Chris, and Sangu return home under the starry sky, ending an eventful day. They stand at the entrance, as if realizing the significance of what they had experienced together. Jugyo, beaming with joy, shouts, "Wonderful!" spreading his arms in an emotional outburst. His reaction conveys genuine delight and perhaps relief at the happy outcome of recent events. Kanji and Chris walk out of the clinic with smiles on their faces, clutching the kittens. Tugyo shouts enthusiastically after them, praising their efforts. Tugyo hugs Sanga with undisguised delight, amazed at how the dog helped save the kitten. He laughs and admits that he could not even imagine that a dog would ever save a cat. Charming angel dogs with the numbers 1 and 2 appear against the clouds, the predecessors of Sangu. Tugyo says that Ichigo and Nigo, being in heaven, must be proud of their descendant. Tugyo reacts decisively to the old woman's question about the kitten's future. He confidently states that the answer is obvious. The old man enthusiastically offers to take in all the kittens, naming them Yungo, Gogo, Rokugo, and Nanako. Confused, Kanji remarks that such names are more appropriate for the Shiba Inu generation. Chris holds up the little kitten with a gentle smile, asking what name they will give it. Sugio confidently answers that it will be called Nanako, emphasizing this with a warm intonation. Chris lovingly names the kitten Nanago, lifting him up in a solemn gesture as if acknowledging him as a new member of the family. The kitten meows loudly in response, as if accepting the name. Sumie scolds Sugio sternly, reminding him of his advanced age and hinting that it's time for him to behave more restrained. At this time, laughter is heard off-screen, probably in response to her remark. Kanji smiles and assures Sumi that there is no need to worry. He intends to remain active and cheerful until he is 100 years old. The woman only sighs wearily, not particularly impressed by his optimism. A veterinarian stands outside the clinic and offers to help, saying he can find new homes for the kittens. He looks kind and confident, demonstrating a gesture of support. Kanji says that the search will take a week or two, while Sugio sits dramatically on his lap, worried. Sumi says that if it's only for a short time, they can look after the kittens themselves. Sumi turns to Chris with curiosity, wanting to discuss the future of the kittens. Chris, holding one of the kittens to his cheek, happily agrees to the idea of keeping one baby for himself and Kanji. King Kakantrapenny is slightly taken aback when Sugio enthusiastically supports the idea of keeping one kitten for himself. Chris, slightly embarrassed, still clutches the kitten to her chest. Kanji asks for some time to think, to which he receives a positive response from the elders. Sumio smiles softly and suddenly asks if they are hungry, causing Kanji and Chris to react in surprise. A generously laid dinner appears on the table, a variety of traditional dishes neatly laid out on plates. Chris looks at the food in surprise, calling it unusual, while Kanji laughs, explaining that it is typical country cuisine. Everyone gathers at the table. Sugio, Sumio, Chris, and Kanji. They are wished a pleasant appetite and allowed to eat as much as they want. Chris looks at the food with interest, anticipating the meal, and Kanji casts a warm glance at her. When Chris reaches for the treat, Kanji gently reminds her to put the food on her plate first. Sango lies on the floor away from the table, with the rescued kittens huddled next to him. Chris enjoys tasting the first dish, carefully holding the food with chopsticks. Chris exclaims how delicious the food turned out, causing Sumie to smile warmly and approve. Sugio recalls that this year's taro harvest went smoothly and without problems. Chris continues to eat with undisguised appetite, his mouth full, and Sugio notices, with alarm, that she isn't even listening to him. Sumie looks at the girl with affection, watching with pleasure as she enjoys every spoonful of food. Chris is stunned to find that she has already finished the entire contents of her bowl before she can blink. Sumie extends her hand to Chris with a warm smile, asking for her plate to put more on. Chris politely thanks the hostess, happy to have another portion of delicious food. Chris, with a genuine smile, admires the taste of the dishes, admitting that the village food is really very good. Her face shows genuine surprise and pleasure from the meal. Kanji eats rice with gusto, not hiding her pleasure from the simple but delicious dish. Chris is surprised to notice how quickly he began to eat, before she had even really started. Sugio raises his glass with a satisfied smile and warmly remarks that Kanji really likes the food his grandmother cooks. Kanji confirms Sugio's words with a sincere smile, saying that everything Sumi-san cooks is truly exquisite. He looks pleased and grateful, enjoying the homely atmosphere and delicious food. Sumi-san modestly remarks that flattery will not achieve anything, while Kanji assures that he is only telling the truth. Chris pauses, looking thoughtfully at Kanji, who continues to eat vigorously. Suddenly, her attention is drawn to a small kitten walking nearby. Chris pours milk into the kitten's bowl using the packaging they brought from the clinic, leaning over him carefully. Kanji and the others watch with interest as Chris sits down next to the kitten, who is faintly sniffing the milk but doesn't seem to be ready to drink it yet. Kanji, noticing the situation, takes something out of his bag and says encouragingly that they definitely brought a feeding bottle. Chris, holding a bottle of milk, smiles softly at the kitten and gently coaxes him to try the delicious milk. The little kitten carefully takes the nipple from Chris's hands and finally begins to feed. Kanji, Sugio, and Sumio watch in amazement as Chris feeds a small kitten from a bottle. Chris carefully holds the kitten, who is greedily sucking milk, and she herself closely monitors its condition. The room is silent, broken only by the quiet sounds of feeding, and everyone present watches what is happening with affection. Late in the evening, Kanji bids farewell to Tsugio and Sumiya, promising to return tomorrow, and the old men happily wish him luck. Kanji watches with a smile as Chris carefully holds the kitten Nanago and tenderly says that he has now become their family. Against the backdrop of a starry sky, a house is shown where a new connection between people and animals has accidentally but firmly taken root, uniting everyone into one friendly family. As soon as the morning silence had taken its place, a small kitten quietly approached the futon on which Chris was sleeping and meowed, as if asking for her attention or warmth. The girl, without waking up, turned slightly onto her other side, and the persistent kitten, not losing hope, quickly climbed onto the mattress, hoping to be closer. Waking up to familiar sounds, Chris opens his eyes with a slight smile and, looking at the baby, tenderly wishes him good morning, feeling how a real connection is born between them. Chris looked at Kanji carefully and, with a slight worry in her voice, asked if he was really sure about his decision to go alone. With a slight smile, holding Nango in his arms, Kanji calmly replied that everything was fine and that he was going to go to the field alone so as not to bother her with unnecessary worries. Kanji added that it would be great if Chris helped Sumi-san, because she was currently taking care of 3 cats at once, and this certainly required a lot of effort and time. Chris smiled, hugged Nanago tighter, and, watching Kanji drive away, felt a quiet feeling of affection and care being born inside her. 3 kittens, joyfully stretching their paws up, meow at the same time, as if welcoming a new day in this house. Chris enters the room with Nanako in his arms and cheerfully greets Sumi, who smiles and wishes Chris good morning. As Chris goes deeper into the room, she sees the kittens surrounding Sumi, who has fallen to the floor and is confusedly asking for help. Finally, after much play and fuss, the kittens fall asleep peacefully next to each other, and tired Sumi sighs and remembers how she once raised her own child. Sango, noticing what is happening, quickly slips out into the street, leaving Sumi to deal with it alone, which makes Chris laugh. An older woman with a kind smile asks Chris if she likes sweets, clearly planning something. In another shot, the clock shows that it is quite late, and the grandmother again addresses Chris by name, as if about to offer her something special. Hearing an unexpected question about sweets, Chris asks again in surprise, not quite understanding where the conversation is heading. Soon, a whole plate full of delicious, airy sweets appeared in front of Chris, exuding warmth and comfort. The grandmother, with a slight tired look on her face, looks at Chris while the girl, curiously, begins to slowly approach the food. Carefully picking up one of the sweets, Chris eagerly takes her first bite, and her face immediately reflects pleasure. With each new bite, the pleasure only grows. Chris eats with such happiness that it seems as if the world around her ceases to exist, leaving her alone with an incredibly delicious treat. Chris, unable to contain herself, continues to reach out to the plate of sweets, begging Sumi-san to help her because she absolutely can't stop, causing the old lady to burst into laughter. When Chris exclaims that it's her first time eating something like this, Sumi-san asks her in surprise, wondering if she's never tried this delicacy before. Chris, pondering what he heard, repeats the word baking in confusion, and Sumi-san, with slight embarrassment, notes that baking also exists in other countries. With her face beaming with delight, Chris exclaims that it is so delicious that her mouth is watering, and excitedly admits that this is the first time she has tried such incredible pastries, comparing them to the delicacies of the European kingdom. Sumi-san is thoughtfully surprised that she has never heard of such a place, and sincerely asks Chris where exactly this mysterious European kingdom is, and Chris only sighs in confusion in response. Kanji seriously explains to Chris that things like magic or talking about another world should be kept secret from others to avoid attracting unnecessary attention. Chris, trying to look as natural as possible, nervously justifies herself to the old man, saying that she is from Europe, and, as if to confirm her words, adds that she is already 20 years old. When Tsugio returns to the room, Chris greets him enthusiastically while he, noticing the daifuku on the table, excitedly offers to help him eat them. The kittens, who had recently been sleeping peacefully, suddenly began to raise their heads one after another and meow quietly, as if reacting to the excitement in the room. Tsugio tries to justify himself in confusion, reminding him that he just returned from the farm, but Sumi, with a slight smile, calmly informs him that she will now leave the care of the kittens to him. Chris sits quietly at the table with the 2 elderly owners of the house, while his grandmother prepares to pour tea for everyone. One of the old men notes with slight alarm that the village women are too strong, and he becomes a little afraid, although he acknowledges her excellent cooking skills. With a soft smile, Chris admits that this is the first time she's seen Kanji Dono so engrossed in food that he can't stop. The old man asks doubtfully if Kanchan told her about an important detail that she should have known. Looking at Chris seriously, the old man reveals that Grandma's younger sister was actually Kanchan's late mother, revealing unexpected family connections to her. Chris is overcome with surprise and cannot hide her amazement, asking again in bewilderment. The old man recalls that, although the women's characters differed greatly, their food was surprisingly similar in taste and warmth. Kanji, with a smile on his face, says that everything Sumi-san cooks turns out incredibly delicious, which pleasantly surprises Chris. The old man, surrounded by cheerful kittens, agrees, and adds that this is why Kanchan values home-cooked food so much. Chris looks at his interlocutor in surprise, thinking about his words about the importance of food and memories. Meanwhile, the grandmother is calmly doing her housework when she suddenly hears a strange noise that attracts her attention. Chris called out sharply to Sumi Dono in the kitchen, running up to her with a serious expression on her face, which immediately caused the old lady to look worried. Nervously and fiddling with the hem of her clothes, the girl timidly asked permission to ask a question, thoughts about cooking and important feelings spinning in her head. Clenching her fists in determination, Chris bluntly stated that she wanted to learn how to cook like Kanji Dono's mother once did, so that she could please everyone with her cooking. She stood before Sumi Dono, clenching her fists tightly and raising her gaze, expressing all her determination not to back down from this request. Sumi Dono, slightly narrowing her eyes with a smile, promised that from now on she would teach her more strictly than anyone else, and Chris readily accepted these conditions. The little kittens nestled comfortably next to the big dog, enjoying her warmth and care, as if she were their own mother. The dog was resting peacefully while the kittens crawled on her carefreely and fell asleep. At this time, the kitchen was filled with a lively atmosphere, with Sumi-san and Christiane standing next to each other at the work table, busy preparing food together, giving the impression of a real family scene. Chris, with a serious face, tried to cut up the fish on the cutting board, while Sumi-san gently pointed out her mistakes, patiently teaching her every move. The aromas of the delicious broth filled the kitchen as Chris carefully tasted it, trying to get the right balance of spices and ingredients. Pots were merrily boiling on the stove, and the prepared products were neatly laid out on the table. Sumi-san watched with a slight smile as Chris enthusiastically continued to cook, under her sensitive guidance. Chris works tirelessly day after day without rest, devotedly pursuing her new goal that has captured her heart. Every day, Sumi-san asks herself only one question. Will she be able to achieve what her younger sister could not? An older man watches everything that is happening from behind a screen, clearly concerned, but not interfering. When his attempt to enter the kitchen is quickly cut off by Sumi-san's cry of a battlefield of women, he has no choice but to run away quickly, asking his grandmother for forgiveness. The situation makes Chris laugh out loud, and Sumi-san just sighs, realizing that the kitchen has returned to its usual order. Kanji, holding the bowl of food in his hands with concentration, carefully tastes it, enjoying every sip. Chris, watching his reaction, asks with excitement in his voice if he liked her dish. Smiling with a sincere and bright smile, Kanji happily replies that it is indeed very tasty. Hearing his praise, Chris cannot contain his happiness and smiles widely, glowing with joy. At this moment, a veterinarian approaches the house, leaning forward to greet them politely. Together, Kanji, Chris, Tsugyo, Sumi go out to greet the guest, realizing that an important moment has arrived. As it turns out, today was the very day when the three kittens were to be taken to their new caring parents. Everyone gathers in the room, watching as the kittens meow happily and surround Sangu. The dog licks one of the babies with good nature, and the others look at him in surprise. Against the backdrop of the joyful scene, Kanji feels a slight sadness, and admits that he wants to cry a little. His face reflects mixed feelings of joy and sadness. Sugio, overcome with emotion, exclaims that he cannot just give the kittens away. He clutches them in his hands, as if afraid to part with them forever. The old man, his face distorted by tears, screams loudly about how it is possible to give away such precious children without regret. His despair sounds especially piercing in the silence of the room. The people around him panic and reproach Tsugio for being too dramatic, accusing him of cruelty. They assure him that the children will find good homes and will never suffer again. Tsugio says the kittens' names with a sad expression, barely holding back tears. Kanji looks straight ahead, and Chris smiles, trying to lighten the mood. An old man with a kitten in his hands looks timidly at his interlocutor, who calmly asks him not to worry. His posture betrays confusion and an internal struggle. The man with the mustache explains that the foster parents live in the same prefecture. He assures Tsugio that she will have the opportunity to meet the kittens again. The vet adds that he personally knows the new owner and considers him a reliable person. Kanji asks with relief to take care of the babies, and the old man, barely audible, responds. Tsugio kneels down, head bowed in dismay before the veterinarian. Sumi sympathetically offers to pour the guests some tea, but he sheepishly declines. Chris, holding back a slight sadness, offers to help with the housework. Kanji looks at her in surprise, but agrees with a slight smile. The girl cautiously approaches the kitchen where Sumi is busy working. The elderly woman, hearing the approach, turns around in surprise. Sumi-san, with a sad expression, slowly raises her hand to her eyes. Chris calls out to her worriedly, noticing the strange reaction. Chris sincerely admits that he begins to understand Sumi's feelings better, recalling the events of the last weeks. The woman says heavily that it is not only about the cat, but about the pain of separation between brothers and sisters. Sumi, with a slight sadness in her voice, admits that she suddenly remembered her younger sister. Chris, slightly surprised, asks again, not immediately understanding her words. Sumi-san jokes with a slight smile that she simply doesn't like getting old. She assures the girl that everything is fine and asks her not to worry about her mood. Chris, with a slight smile through his tears, quietly agrees with his grandmother. The three kittens are placed in a carrier and meow as they wait in the car. Chris, Kanji, and Sumi-san stand nearby, watching the farewell scene. The car with the kittens starts to drive away down the road, leaving those seeing them off behind. Everyone watches silently, saying goodbye to the little ones who have become a part of their lives. Kanji, drying his hair after the bath, announces that he is finished, and now it is Chris's turn. There is silence outside, and the kitten meows softly, watching him. The guy, walking barefoot on the floor, calls out to the girl. He is surprised by her absence and tries to understand where she could have gone. Kanji lifts the kitten in his arms, slightly confused. He wonders where Chris might have gone, his brows furrowing slightly. Meanwhile, Chris sits alone by the river, looking at the water. Her face expresses calm and slightly thoughtful under the starry sky. A memory of her distant childhood comes to mind, when Chris was only 5 years old. She remembers the moment when she fell and hurt herself badly, feeling a sharp pain. The boy extends his hand with a kind smile, helping little Chris to her feet. The girl reaches out to him gratefully, feeling the warmth of this support. Chris remembers how she always admired her older brother. She would walk behind him, trying to keep up, filled with pride for him. The girl continued to follow her brother, always trying to catch up with his back. He walked confidently forward, and she, little, ran after him. Brother Chris became a knight and a hero, celebrated by a whole crowd. Everyone admired him, and she, lost among people, looked up to him. Chris remembers that only she knew about her brother's real pain. Behind the loud fame was a soul suffering from loss and loneliness after the death of his friends. Chris firmly declares that she too wants to become a knight to protect the country. Her brother, furious, asks why she is going against his will. Memories of times past surface, when nature changed along with their destinies. Despite everything, a strong determination grew inside Chris. The brother unexpectedly agrees and offers to defend the country together. Chris looks at him in surprise, not immediately believing his words. He instructs her to never forget that he is always there for her. Even if she ends up in hell itself, he promises to save her. The memory of her brother fills Chris's heart with warmth and sadness. She whispers his name as she looks out into the peaceful night. Chris asks her with a slight smile if everything is okay with her. She stands under the night sky, looking into the endless distance. An image of a smiling Chris with a wreath of flowers appears before her eyes. A voice softly pronounces her name, as if calling from somewhere far away. At the Magic Research Institute, a girl in a hat explains that there is a forbidden magic called teleportation. The story continues. The ancient gods used this magic to travel. The girl says that she wrote down the spell and passed it on. She explains that the scroll is a special paper with a magic circle engraved on it. This allows powerful spells to be cast. The illustration shows that even a normal person, not a mage, can activate the scroll. As long as it emits magical energy, powerful spells can be cast. Chris's brother interrupts the witch's explanation, saying that there are more important things to do now. The girl turns around in surprise, not expecting such a reaction. He asks her seriously what exactly he should do, his gaze full of determination and impatience. The witch explains that first they need to find out where the girl they are looking for is. She looks at him with slight anxiety. First, they need to find the place where the spell was cast. The shot shows a galloping horse carrying them through the forest. Upon reaching the forest, Chris's brother doubts whether this is really the place. The witch confidently confirms that this is it. They reach the Black Forest, which used to be full of magical beasts. Now, thanks to research, there are almost no animals left, and the forest has become quiet. The witch, raising her finger, begins to share important information. Her face is serious, and she is clearly preparing to share something significant. She says that the residents on the edge of the forest saw a column of light going into the sky. Everyone watched the strange phenomenon with surprise. The witch suggests that the outbreak was caused by a teleportation spell. She adds that they are in the right area between the capital and the fort. Despite all their efforts, the search continued for 2 weeks without success. Under the scorching sun, they stood on the edge of a cliff, finding no traces. The girl is alarmed to see no traces of magic, although calculations showed otherwise. Chris's brother mockingly calls her a child prodigy. The witch crosses her arms and mutters angrily that she is not going to respond to children's provocations. She tries to remain serious. The man smirks and teases her, calling her a short mage. The girl flares up with anger, barely holding back her irritation. However, he admits that he has no choice but to trust her. His face remains serious and focused. The witch, lowering her head, apologizes sheepishly. Her voice sounds quiet, and her look is full of remorse. The girl, studying the map, admits that they have already checked the entire territory several times. Her voice sounds tired, but she does not lose hope. Chris's brother recalls a pillar of wind that supposedly reached into the sky. His face remains serious, as if he is pondering something important. The witch smiles and notes that reaching the sky sounds too unrealistic. She explains that the maximum the wind column could reach was the clouds. Suddenly, her eyes widen in realization, and she exclaims that she now understands everything. The girl asks everyone to stop, having found an important clue. The man asks what happened to Louise with a serious expression. He watches her reaction carefully. The girl admits that she may have made a mistake in her calculations. She asks Bartholomew to accompany her to another place. Louise concentrates, puts her hands together in a magical gesture, and suddenly launches the spell. After that, they both fly into the air. An aerial flight occurs, and the two magically rise above the ground. Louise smiles, confident in her actions. She is pleased that her hypothesis was correct, and thanks the knight for his help. Bartholomew shouts, demanding an immediate explanation of what is happening. Louise calmly clarifies that her first idea was wrong. She adds that she made a mistake in her initial calculations, causing the knight genuine shock. Louise and Bartholomew continue to hover above the ground, observing the gigantic trail of destruction. The girl admits that a massive mistake has been made. Louise smiles and notes that such effects were to be expected from the breath magic of the ancient gods. Her eyes shine with anticipation of the discovery. She explains that in order to find Christina, the magic in the center of the trail must be restored. The spiritual light can be used to bind the remaining magic. Bartholomew, shocked, asks again if this is possible. Louise happily declares that the word impossible does not exist in her dictionary. The knight is relieved that they have a chance to find Christina. He excitedly repeats her name, and the girl laughs cheerfully. Bartholomew asks with anger in his voice why Louise didn't tell him everything earlier. His emotions are overflowing, and he can hardly contain his irritation. The girl explains that using forbidden magic is considered a serious crime for its creator. She looks at him with remorse. Louise admits that she was confident in Christina's protection thanks to her spiritual light. She naively thought that the girl would be able to return on her own. Then Louise tells that she later confessed everything to His Eminence. Bartholomew asks again in confusion, not believing what he heard. She adds that she spent the evening in prison as punishment. Bartholomew is shocked by this confession and barely hides his surprise. He asks seriously why she is so persistent in looking for his sister. His gaze becomes attentive and wary. Louise, embarrassed, asks Guise if he really wants her to confess her feelings out loud. Her cheeks flush slightly. Gathering her courage, she declares that Christina is her only friend. Bartholomew listens attentively to her words. A warm, barely noticeable smile appears on the knight's face. Louise is surprised to notice his unexpected reaction. Bartholomew gently places his hand on her head and tells her that Christina is not her only friend. He assures her that he is her friend too. Louise flushes in confusion, claiming that a man touching a girl's hair has a special meaning. She stutters, stammering with excitement. Bartholomew laughs and tells her not to worry, calling her short again. Louise protests indignantly, pointing out that he is behaving like a real hero from old novels. Elsewhere, there are wistful thoughts. After all these years, her brother and best friend may still be looking for her. Christina looks at the sky with slight sadness. Time continues its course, inexorably carrying memories into the past. At this time, a cat is slowly walking down the hallway in the house. She meows, attracting attention, as if she wants to say something. The young man is talking on the phone, asking if there is any news from Chris Chan. His interlocutor calmly answers, referring to Melvis's farm. She explains that touching a woman's hair is traditionally considered an act of courtship. The man is confused as he imagines what happened between him and Christina. The footage shows him gently touching the girl's head. Realizing the meaning of this gesture, he begins to sheepishly reflect on his feelings. A girl, taking care of her nails, notices that platonic love has gone out of fashion in the modern world. She says this with a slight irony. She continues to think while looking out the window. Despite her worries about Chris Chan, it is important to understand one thing. In her opinion, no emotional connection can compare to physical intimacy. The man on the other end of the line sadly agrees, but still hesitates. Suddenly, the girl remembers the need to send a regular report on them. She is slightly surprised that she almost forgot about it. Kanji sighed heavily, holding the phone to his ear and trying to find the right words. His face was worried, and his voice sounded uncertain. The girl in the sportswear raised her hand, confidently promising that she would not write about the kitten in the report. She looked at her interlocutor carefully, trying to calm him down. The girl admitted in a serious tone that she had previously asked Chris not to use magic, but now she realized there was no way out. She added that she was sure that Chris herself realized this. Kanji slowly walked barefoot across the floor, thinking about what he had heard during the conversation. His footsteps sounded hollow, emphasizing the heavy atmosphere around him. Kanji, still holding the phone, calmly assured his interlocutor not to worry. At this time, Chris appeared at the door, watching his conversation in surprise. Kanji, with his back to Chris, explained that he was speaking to a regular patient of hers from the hospital. His voice was calm, although he still held the phone to his ear. The girl at the end of the line calmly said that she understood and said goodbye. The guy, noticing Chris's back, exclaimed in panic that she had scared him a lot. Kanji looked at the girl in surprise, asking why she had such a gloomy expression on her face. Chris remained silent, looking down, not immediately finding what to say. Chris quietly apologized to Kanji, and he asked again in surprise, not understanding what was going on. At that moment, the large wall clock behind him was rhythmically chiming the time. Suddenly, a strange noise was heard, and Kanji watched in horror as the kitchen appliances began to shake and jump. Thick steam poured out of the rice cooker and the slow cooker, filling the room with an alarming noise. Kanji screamed in horror, trying to understand what had happened. Chris, with her head down and her fists clenched, quietly asked him for forgiveness. The embarrassed girl explained that the magic tools in this world were too easy to use. She looked away guiltily, admitting her mistake. Chris admitted that out of boredom, she decided to use magic to improve the operation of appliances by pressing buttons. She enthusiastically called out to the washing machine and rice cooker, asking them to become better. Chris lowered her head with a dejected look, hearing the silent reproach of Kanji, who was holding a sign with the inscription prohibiting magic. The girl resignedly muttered that she understood everything and would not violate it anymore. The new drum washing machine that Kanji had been dreaming about so much appeared in the backyard. The guy, beaming with joy, sincerely thanked for the long-awaited purchase. Kanji exclaimed in annoyance, asking how long Chris was going to sit there morose. The girl, lowering her head, muttered quietly that it was her fault. Chris, holding back tears, asked him not to console her, because she knew perfectly well that magic tools were expensive. Kanji tried to explain that the washing machine and rice cooker were old anyway. Chris noticed Nanago playing enthusiastically among the plants by the path. She stared at the kitten in surprise, not understanding what he was up to. Coming closer, Chris carefully picked up Nanago, frowning slightly. She gently scolded him, asking him not to play with the vegetables anymore. Chris looked at the plants carefully and asked Kanji if she had guessed correctly that they were beans. The guy confirmed her guess, adding that the name was quite appropriate. Chris, holding Nanago close, asked if it was true that if the beans fell out when shaken, they were ripe. Kanji thoughtfully replied that it varied. The girl asked with interest whether it was possible to preserve beans here too. Kei explains that in their area, beans are dried in the sun and then boiled after soaking. Kanji said with a slight smile that maybe her method would work too. His expression was friendly and encouraging. Kanji explained that he usually dried the beans in the sun until they changed color. Chris was surprised to see that there were many different ways to process them. Kanji suggested taking advantage of the good weather and laying the beans out to dry in the sun. His voice was encouraging, as if inviting the girl to join in. Kanji was relieved to see that the beans he had collected would be enough, as sunny weather was expected for 2 or 3 days ahead. The plants were carefully laid out on a tarp to begin drying. Chris asked in surprise why drying was only possible during the day and not at night. Kanji explained that at night the beans could get wet due to heavy dew. The guy showed Chris the fabric with a smile and said that he had an idea on how to protect the crop. The girl asked with interest what exactly he was going to use. Kanji explained that it was a mosquito net, the kind commonly found in old houses. He carefully unrolled it, ready to use it to protect the plants. Kanji smiled and asked Chris to help him finish the job while the kitten slept peacefully on the porch. The net was stretched over the beans, creating a secure shelter from any possible trouble. Chris enthusiastically agreed to help and asked what else could be done. Her energetic attitude immediately raised the mood at work. She said with a slight smile that after all the inconvenience she had caused, she should at least make amends in some way. There was genuine determination in her voice. Kanji looked at Chris with a warm smile, without saying a word. His calm gaze conveyed approval and gratitude. He said her name softly, then added seriously that she shouldn't worry so much. Chris froze, catching the support and concern in his words. Chris, with her head down and her arms crossed, quietly asked Kanji why he wasn't mad at her. Kanji looked at her in surprise, not immediately finding an answer. Against the backdrop of a clear sky, Chris thoughtfully noted that Kanji had changed greatly since their return from the hospital. She admitted that she did not know how long she would be treated as a guest. Kanji couldn't help but laugh loudly, causing Chris to be completely confused. She asked him, confused, what exactly made him laugh so much. Laughing, Kanji reached out and patted Chris on the head. The girl blushed to her ears, looking at him with a confused and touched expression. Kanji, with a slight smile, remarked that he didn't like the constant sense of hesitation he felt in Chris. He advised her to stop being angry with herself and try to just enjoy life. Chris, hearing his words, suddenly blushed to the tips of her ears and awkwardly hid her face in her hands. Kanji looked at her in surprise, not understanding the reason for such a violent reaction. Kanji panicked and tried to apologize for touching her hair again, but suddenly the sky became overcast. A heavy rain began to fall, and the two of them rushed to save the beans and get towels. The story takes place in Mitsuma Village, a small, remote place that was on the verge of becoming a rundown settlement. Kanji listens thoughtfully to the surroundings, noticing that things have begun to change recently. Chris finds herself surrounded by 2 girls who admiringly mistake her for a model from Paris Fashion Week. The girls excitedly pepper her with questions, and Chris is at a loss as to how to respond. The schoolgirls, their eyes shining, admit that they have come from a neighboring village. They excitedly ask permission to take a photo with Chris, barely containing their delight. Kanji noticed that people were coming to see Chris more and more often lately. He was surprised to see the bustle even in the forest, which was usually empty. Chris, slightly blushing, stood there with a naive smile on her face, attracting more and more attention. A regret flashed through Kanji's mind that she might feel like living in the village was a waste of time. Hanami, with a cheerful expression, imagined how much she adored Chris, making a heart with her hands. Kanji's inner voice thought that even if Hanami was spreading rumors, she had already returned to the city a long time ago. The old and young men of the village were discussing Chris, whispering admiringly about her appearance. The dogs and crows standing nearby made it seem as if even the animals were caught up in the local commotion. Kanji, with a tired expression on his face, politely asked the girls to be quiet while he took a photo of them with Chris. Despite his outward politeness, he felt irritated by all the fuss inside. Kanji suggested that Chris go to a field downstream to continue working. The girl looked at him in surprise, but quickly agreed. They got into the car to drive to the next field scattered somewhere within the village. Kanji drove calmly, telling about the local lands. The village had once thrived on agriculture, but now there were only about 10 farms left. Kanji drove across the bridge, reminiscing about the bygone days. As he drove, he reflected on how farming was no longer profitable. His face reflected a mixture of sadness and acceptance. Kanji recalled a discussion about compensation, where his income was overestimated. He explained with annoyance that after all necessary expenses were deducted, very little was left. Kanji pondered the income of a farmer, explaining that to earn a decent income, one would need to own about 3 hectares of land. He noted sadly that he did not have that much land. For this reason, Kanji grew rare and expensive varieties of vegetables, such as Sicilian peppers and solyanka. This allowed him to somehow make ends meet. Chris sat in the car next to Kanji, looking thoughtfully out the window. The guy asked her worriedly what happened, noticing her silence. Chris calmly assured him that everything was fine and promised to try not to use magic in front of others. Her serious and sincere tone surprised Kanji. The car loaded with boxes drove down the road, and Kanji thought about how much Chris wanted to try his best. Early in the morning, Chris stood in the field with Kanji, preparing to start work. Despite the difficulties, she never complained about the hard life of a farmer. Kanji explained with a smile that these were ordinary green onions, which are often used in cooking. Although the sprouts were still small, they looked neat and healthy. Chris, holding her nose with her hand, realized with horror that in front of her was that very, quote, devilish vegetable. Kanji, not understanding her reaction, laughed cheerfully and asked what she was talking about. Chris admitted that she had already gotten used to the strangeness of the local world, but sometimes she encountered things that scared her. Kanji asked in surprise if the bow from her world could have magical properties. Chris quickly clarified that she had meant something completely different. In her home world, there really was a plant resembling the local onion. Chris said with a serious expression that in her world, there were carnivorous plants. Kanji asked in shock, could such plants really eat people? Chris explained that the plants weren't that big, so they weren't a serious threat. Her calmness calmed Kanji down somewhat, but it still left him confused. Standing together at the edge of the field, Kanji thought about how little he knew about Chris's world. The girl added that, unlike plants, small animals could actually pose a danger. Kanji, still holding the onion, informed Chris that it was not a regular green onion, but a special kind called calso. He smiled, trying to keep the conversation light. Kanji explained that calco is a Spanish onion that even has famous festivals around it. He also mentioned that Japan has similar celebrations, which surprised and delighted Chris. Chris, feeling awkward, paused and admitted that she talked too much. Her eyes were serious, as if she was worried about her words. Kanji agreed with a smile, adding that there are many varieties of it in Japan. They stood in the field as Kanji talked about the white and green onions that were grown in the Kanto and Kansai regions. Chris listened attentively, agreeing with a slight nod. In the car, Chris expressed her desire to learn more about vegetables so she could better understand their varieties. However, despite Kanji's words about not rushing, she firmly stated that she could not do otherwise. Kanji drove with a slight smile on his face, understanding the seriousness of Chris's aspirations. Chris pointed out to Kanji the thick growth of plants they saw in the field. She quietly said that these were the plants she was talking about. Kanji, kneeling among the undergrowth, was surprised that most of the plants had survived. Chris called it sanshoki, and the note specified that it was Jerusalem artichoke. Kanji happily noted that the harvest was ripe, causing Chris to look surprised. His words filled the atmosphere with a slight sense of accomplishment. Chris listened attentively as Kanji explained the harvesting process. The first thing he advised her to do was to take a pair of scissors to trim the plants. Later, at the table, Chris was delighted to see Kanji garnish the dish he had prepared with strips of kelp. The boy reminded her again how hard life on a farm was, where the work never ended even on weekends. Kanji folded his hands in a prayerful gesture, expressing inner gratitude. He reflected on his feelings about life on the farm and thanked his fate for being born in the village. His words were full of sincerity and quiet contentment. Chris carried heavy shopping bags, and Sumi walked leisurely behind her. They walked along a country road surrounded by fields and mountains. The older woman, with a kind smile, apologized to Chris for often bothering her. When Chris stopped, the woman called her name tenderly. Kanji and Chris were busily harvesting the crops in the field, carefully sorting through the plants. Both were focused on their work and barely spoke. Feeling tired, Chris suggested taking a short break. She raised her head to the sky, as if thinking about something important. Kanji looked at Chris with concern when he noticed her standing there, staring at one spot. The girl seemed to be lost in her thoughts, not immediately reacting to his words. It was at this moment that Chris realized how often she became introspective while looking at the sky. She guiltily apologized to Kanji for getting distracted, remembering the suggestion to take a break. Sitting in the car on the way back, Chris looked thoughtfully out the window, lost in her thoughts. Inside, she still felt the weight of the emotions she had experienced. In the dark silence, Chris admitted her true desire to herself. She still dreamed of returning to her native world. Chris, smiling, played with the dog and tried to distract herself from heavy thoughts. She believed that the melancholy would pass with time. Kanji was surprised to see Chris begin training the dog. He thought that she had already made her decision to stay in their world. The older man watched in awe as Chris taught the dog the paw command. His reaction was so intense that it seemed he was barely able to control his emotions. Chris turned around in surprise at the sound of rapidly approaching footsteps, her face expressing slight confusion and alarm. Nanago, jumping happily, almost crashed into Chris and Kanji. Kanji was afraid for their safety, but noted to himself that the dog's training had not been in vain. Chris thought about the difference between her old world and this one. It was calmer, safer, and more comfortable here. Kanji held Nanago tenderly in his arms while Chris watched them with a smile. He thought about his feelings for her, realizing that they were starting to change his heart. Chris lay on a futon in a traditional Japanese room, wrapped in a blanket in the midst of the morning silence. The girl slowly opened her eyes, looking at the ceiling with a thoughtful expression on her face. An alarming guess flashed through her mind that perhaps her feelings were a lie. Chris, sitting on the futon, was thinking about her love for Kanji, acknowledging that these feelings were genuine and not imaginary. A voice called out to her, asking if she was asleep, breaking the silence of the night. Hanami sighed, sitting up on the bed and looking forward thoughtfully, as if she was thinking about something important. Chris, sitting up in bed, looked in surprise at her neighbor, who asked worriedly what had happened. Chris, slightly embarrassed, recognized her interlocutor as Hanami, who in response dropped her shoulders in relief. Hanami gently advised Chris not to put pressure on herself and, if she wanted, to take a pill to help her cope with the difficult thoughts. Chris replied with a warm smile that she no longer needed medication, reminding her that they had come here together after being discharged from the hospital. Chris, with a shy smile, assured that she would soon return to Kanji's house and be able to sleep peacefully, but Hanamido, with a slight sigh, invited her to come closer. Hanamido gently hugged Chris to herself, hugging her head, while the girl, blushing deeply, allowed herself to be consoled with confusion. Chris, blushing deeply, was mentally indignant that she was no longer a child and could easily sleep alone. But Hanamido, closing her eyes, gently asked her to just behave quietly. Left alone with Hanami on the bed, Chris curled up under the covers, still feeling slightly embarrassed about what had happened. As she fell asleep in silence, Chris thought wistfully about what it would be like to have an older sister who would always make her feel warm and calm. When Chris woke up in the morning, she found a kitten next to her, who began to purr softly, and she, still sleepy, quietly called out to Hanami. Chris made a firm decision to stop worrying about trifles and concentrate on today's work, mentally preparing for the new day. Kanji and Chris sat on the back of the truck, casually grabbing a bite to eat after work, enjoying the warm atmosphere of their time together. Kanji suddenly noticed that something in the girl's behavior made him wary, and he looked up with slight excitement. Chris stood with her back turned to Kanji, and when she turned around, her eyes expressed thoughtfulness and a slight sadness that the guy immediately felt. Chris raised her head to the sky, silently gazing at the clouds, until Kanji, overcoming his hesitation, cautiously called her name. Kanji, wiping sweat from his face with a towel, asked with genuine concern if Chris missed their old home, noticing something uneasy in her mood. Chris's eyes widened at the unexpected question, and a slight look of confusion entered her gaze. Chris lowered her head and admitted to herself with a warm smile that she couldn't lie, even if she tried very hard. Kanji began to make excuses in a panic, embarrassed by the misunderstanding, and Chris silently turned away, not daring to answer him anything that day. The next morning, as the sun was just beginning to rise above the horizon, Chris was awakened by loud sounds coming from the kitchen. Entering the room, the girl was surprised to see that a sumptuous breakfast was laid on the table, consisting of many of her favorite dishes. Kanji offered to start breakfast with a kind smile, waving his hand in greeting and trying to create a relaxed atmosphere. Noticing Nanago's puzzled look, the boy quickly apologized to the kitten for his forgetfulness, asking him to join in the meal as well. Chris thanked him for the breakfast with a slight smile, genuinely glad that maybe being a bit of a child sometimes wasn't such a bad thing. Outside, Chris said a cheerful goodbye to two schoolgirls on bicycles, who, laughing and waving their hands, bid her farewell warmly. Kanji, approaching from behind, noticed that the girls clearly wanted to see Chris again, and voiced this observation with a slight smile. The girls pedaled their bikes happily, and Chris thought with a good-natured smile that they both looked very cute. Turning to Kanji, Chris seriously noted that she had been thinking about some things that concerned her life here for a long time. Walking past a city street, the girl thoughtfully watched the courier on a bicycle, remembering that she had often encountered these mechanical horses before. Kanji explained with a smile that bicycles were most often used on paved roads, easily accepting her funny comparison. He also said that there are many types of bikes, including mountain bikes and folding models, which he thought would be very convenient for her. Kanji asked Chris with a warm smile if she wanted anything, causing the girl to freeze in surprise for a moment. The next day, at noon, they were driving together, and Chris anxiously asked Kanji if he was sure about his decision. Kanji laughed and confirmed that everything was fine, and Chris, laughing in response, noted that he usually didn't finish work this early. Stopping at the bike shop, Chris stood in front of the display window in delight, her eyes lighting up with anticipation. Walking inside, the girl cried out in admiration when she saw the many different bicycles neatly displayed for sale. Chris marveled that all Japanese bicycles must have come from that shop, but Kanji laughingly corrected her that that was impossible. The guy admitted with a smile that this was his first time in the store, noting that it only opened at the end of last year. Chris, with a slight blush on her cheeks and a beaming smile, turned around at Kanji's call, waiting for him to say more. Kanji, looking at the inspired girl, suggested that she choose any bicycle she liked, causing her to become joyfully delighted. Kanji calmly pointed out that even the most expensive bike in the store cost around 50,000 yen, which made Chris even happier. Chris, admiring the different models, couldn't choose a bike for a long time, but finally decisively pointed to one hanging on the wall. Kanji noted her choice with approval, saying that a mountain bike would indeed be a good option for their conditions. When Kanji saw the price of 369,000 yen, his face froze in amazement because the amount was far higher than he expected. Later, sitting in the car, Chris pouted with frustration, upset that their plan had fallen through so quickly. Kanji, throwing up his hands, apologized to Chris, explaining that their budget was only 50,000 yen, and the girl, looking offended, admitted that she understood everything. Chris happily announced that she had chosen a different mountain bike that cost only 39,800 yen, which was perfect for their budget. Before the first attempt, Kanji explained to the girl that he would push her from behind, and Chris, with a serious look, clarified that she should steer the wheel herself. Kanji started to push Chris, but the unexpected touch made her scream in embarrassment, and she immediately fell awkwardly along with her bike. Kanji, watching Chris get up after falling, noted with a smile that this was quite normal for the first time. Chris, blushing with shame and anger, loudly complained about where exactly he touched her, and Kanji apologized in a panic, assuring that it all happened by accident. Chris, still embarrassed, suggested that Kanji hold her shoulders instead of her back next time, and they decided to try again. Kanji thought that maybe he shouldn't put pressure on her, but at that moment, Chris fell down again in frustration, demanding that he not say too much. After 20 minutes of persistent attempts, Chris somehow began to cope with the controls, but Kanji, noticing the dirt on her nose, carefully tried to wipe it off. After a few training sessions, Chris was riding her bike confidently, demonstrating amazing reflexes, and even lifting her front wheel. Kanji noted with admiration that the bike was clearly perfect for her, and Chris, laughing merrily, said that bikes were more like sleds than horses. Chris thoughtfully compared cycling to skiing, and Kanji tried to explain to her that they were completely different things. When Chris heard about the downhill, she asked for details with interest, and Kanji confirmed that there were similar tracks for bicycles too. Chris, full of determination, gripped the steering wheel and declared that she would try, but Kanji immediately thought that he might regret his words. Without waiting for further explanation, Chris took off down the mountain on her bike, while Kanji tried to stop her in fear. Kanji shouted in panic that she didn't have any protective gear, but Chris laughed and continued to run madly down, ignoring the danger. Kanji, watching Chris, watched her swift descent down the mountain path with amazement and excitement. Chris, confidently maneuvering between obstacles, continued to rush forward at high speed without slowing down. When Chris cheerfully shouted that she was having fun, Kanji panicked and shouted at her not to get distracted, but it was too late. Watching her fall in horror, Kanji stood frozen in place, unable to do anything right away. Chris, landing on the ground with the help of magic, quietly apologized for breaking her promise and using power for her own safety. Chris reassured Kanji that everything was fine and asked him not to worry since she only used magic to strengthen her body. They looked at the completely wrecked bike together. Chris and Kanji thanked the salespeople, apparently after buying another bike. In the end, Chris rode away on another, second-hand bike, staying within budget, and Kanji sighed and told her to take care of herself. Kanji looked at Chris in confusion, not understanding why she was so excited about an ordinary store. The girl admired the place with delight, as if a real castle had opened before her. Chris was pointing excitedly at one section of the store, wondering what department it was. Kanji watched her excitement with slight confusion. Kanji closed his eyes and sighed with a warm smile as he watched her joy, his face softly accepting of what was happening. With the field in the background, Kanji and Chris stood opposite each other, their rubber boots sinking into the mud. The boy, surprised, asked the girl to repeat her words. Chris, with a slight blush on her cheeks, looked at her interlocutor attentively, preparing to continue the conversation. She opened her mouth to confidently repeat what she had said earlier. Chris excitedly stated that she wanted to try growing crops from seeds. She hoped that by doing so she would better understand the difficulties of farming. She admitted that her idea might seem selfish, but suggested using any available land. Kanji listened to her with surprise, thinking about the proposal. Kanji scratched his cheek thoughtfully, trying to comprehend her intentions. He carefully clarified what exactly she was getting at, causing the girl to become slightly confused. They were walking together among the many plants in a large shopping mall. Kanji suggested that Chris try growing plants in pots to make it easier. Chris, with a slight blush on her cheeks, admitted that she now better understood how difficult it was. Her eyes shone with genuine admiration for what she saw. Kanji was surprised to see that the store even sold such items, not expecting to see them here. He thought about it, because in the past he always bought everything he needed for the farm directly from suppliers. The guy explained to Chris with a slight smile that he usually didn't buy anything retail. The girl listened to him attentively, surprised by his usual practice. Kanji explained the basics of growing plants in pots, showing the tools and materials needed. He emphasized that all the items can be easily found at a home improvement store. Chris, holding bulky shopping for planting, happily assured that she could handle it herself. Kanji, with a little worry, asked her to use the shopping basket. Returning to the house, Chris spread her arms vigorously and enthusiastically suggested that they begin work. Kanji watched her enthusiasm with a smile from his side. Kanji asked Chris with slight hesitation if she was sure about her choice of plant to grow. The girl, smiling, thoughtfully answered that she had already made up her mind. Chris enthusiastically showed off the bag of Hatsukaya daikon seeds, her face glowing with joy and determination. The girl explained that this vegetable grows quickly and has a bright color, which especially attracted her. Kanji admitted with a smile that he liked her choice, despite its cheapness. Chris also, with a cheerful smile, admitted that she really likes dishes from daikon. She dreamed of trying to cook something of her own from her own harvest. Kanji warned with slight excitement that the taste and texture of Hatsukaya daikon may differ from what you are used to. Chris reacted with surprise to his words, trying to understand the difference. Chris asked in tears if the vegetable she had chosen would really be tasteless. Her face expressed despair and fear of hearing an unpleasant answer. Kanji quickly explained that daikon was quite suitable for salads and had a refreshing taste. He assured that he personally liked this vegetable. The boy breathed a sigh of relief, glad that he had managed to calm Chris down. At the same time, he admitted to himself that many people might not like the taste of daikon. Kanji explained that daikon takes more than 20 days to fully grow and is usually grown in the off-season. Chris was surprised by this information, showing genuine interest. Kanji added that winter is too cold for growth, and in summer, the daikon's sharp taste makes it difficult to eat. His calm explanation helped Chris better understand the characteristics of the plant she had chosen. Chris asked with slight anxiety if everything would be okay, since winter was just beginning. Kanji assured her that November was still a good time for planting. He explained that if the pots were kept outside during the day and brought inside at night, there would be no problems with growth. The girl listened attentively to his advice. Chris happily announced that all preparations were complete, showing the neatly arranged containers of soil. Kanji approvingly praised her for her excellent work, but the guy reminded Chris not to overwater the plants. The girl, slightly embarrassed, muttered in response that she knew that herself. Kanji explained that after the seedlings emerged, they would need to thin out the plants a bit to leave the strongest ones. Chris was surprised with a little sadness, but he reassured her, saying that even the thinned-out sprouts could be eaten. Chris happily watered the seeds sown in the pots, trying to be as careful as possible. Her face glowed with inspiration and passion for the process. Picking Nanago up in her arms, the girl promised to feed him daikon when he grew up. She tenderly noted that in small quantities, this vegetable is safe for cats. Chris knelt down next to the flower pot, carefully holding the kitten in her arms. She looked at the crops with trepidation, as if filling them with her care. The girl looked around warily, feeling someone's presence nearby. Her gaze became focused and attentive. Chris turned to the observer hiding in the shadows with a slight grin, making it clear that she had noticed him perfectly well. She calmly said that whoever he was, he would not be able to hide from her. The black figure continued to hide behind the wall, not daring to come out into the light. Its behavior looked tense and suspicious. Chris, with a cold gaze, threatened that if the stranger did not come out immediately, she would have to act. There was a firm determination in her voice. The one hiding around the corner jerked sharply, frightened by the threat. Chris, watching the movement warily, assumed that there might be a demon or a goblin in front of her. A trembling girl in a hood, with ears peeked out from behind the wall, clearly frightened by what was happening. She watched Chris with uncertainty, trying to hide her fear. Chris stared at the stranger in amazement, not immediately realizing who exactly she had seen. Her eyes widened in surprise and mild shock. The hooded girl, trembling with excitement, quickly pulled down her hood, sheepishly making excuses to Chris. Her eyes were full of confusion and fear. Chris smiled warmly and invited the stranger to come closer, assuring her that there was nothing to be afraid of. She admitted her mistake, trying to calm the girl down. With a wide smile, Chris assumed the girl had come to take a photo with her. Her easy and friendly demeanor helped ease the tension. Suddenly, the girl abruptly refused, which caught Chris off guard. Confused, she asked why she had hidden and watched for so long. At that moment, a kitten approached them, attracting everyone's attention. The girl, immediately cheering up, happily ran up to him and began to hug him tenderly, while Chris watched this with a slight smile. Chris introduced herself to the girl with a friendly smile, saying that her name was Christina, but she could just call her Chris. She curiously asked what her interlocutor's name was. The girl, hugging the kitten, was silent for a long time before quietly saying her name. She sheepishly called herself Natsumi. Chris happily praised the girl's name, noting that it was very beautiful. Natsumi, embarrassed, weakly confirmed her words, hugging the kitten to her chest. Chris proudly told us that she does agricultural work. She cheerfully mentioned her planter project. Natsumi asked in surprise what agricultural work meant and what a flower pot was. Chris was slightly confused and surprised that the girl did not know such words. Chris proudly explained that she was growing a vegetable called Hatsuka daikon. Natsumi exclaimed with even greater amazement, not understanding what exactly was being discussed. Natsumi, clutching the kitten, asked if these planters would really grow into Hatsuka daikon. Chris enthusiastically confirmed her guess. With a serious expression, Natsumi admitted that she hated this vegetable. Her answer surprised Chris so much that she couldn't immediately find what to say. Chris quickly tried to stop the girl who had already started to walk away. Natsumi explained that she liked regular daikon, but not the Hatsukaya daikon variety. Chris asked in confusion if the Hatsuka daikon was really bad. Her face showed confusion and slight concern. Natsumi coldly explained that the taste of Hatsukaya daikon is too bitter, salty, and sour at the same time. Chris, having received such an emotional triple attack, was in shock. Chris lay on the ground in utter disappointment, remembering Kanji assuring her that the taste of Hatsukaya daikon was good. She began to wonder if Kanji had lied to her in his words. Natsumi introduced herself by saying that her full name was Yoshi Natsumi and that she was 10 years old. The girl explained that she had recently moved to live with her grandparents in the countryside. She explained that she was currently temporarily out of school. Her voice sounded calm and carefree. Even without TV, internet, or games, Natsumi enjoyed her new life. She stretched out on the grass with a happy smile, enjoying the moment. Natsumi admitted that she felt surrounded by the warm and gentle atmosphere of the village. The internal monologue emphasized that the girl had truly fallen in love with this place. Chris came over with a tray in her hands, carrying tea for herself and Natsumi. The girl was sitting on the veranda, hugging a kitten, and quietly laughing. They sat silently on the veranda and slowly sipped tea. The atmosphere between them was calm and trusting. Chris broke the silence and cautiously asked Natsumi if she had come here because of the local rumors. The girl raised her head in mild surprise. Natsumi hesitantly admitted that she had heard rumors about a beautiful blonde supposedly living with Saki-san. Her cheeks turned slightly pink from embarrassment. Chris laughed, sheepishly explaining that she wasn't married yet, and calling her a beautiful wife was clearly too much. Natsumi watched her reaction with a slight smile. Chris suddenly offered to treat Natsumi to something tasty to cheer her up. The girl asked again in surprise, not understanding what exactly she meant. Chris brought a large treat and apologized for the wait with a smile. Natsumi stared in horror at the huge piece of food that was not cut into pieces. Chris started eating the whole treat without hesitation, leaving Natsumi to watch in shock. The girl couldn't believe that someone would eat it so quickly and without preparation. Natsumi couldn't help but chuckle a little as she watched Chris's serious expression. The girl smiled sincerely, feeling the tension between them completely disappear. Chris calmly licked her fingers after eating, while Natsumi laughed, amazed at her speed. The girl couldn't believe that Chris ate everything so quickly. Chris enthusiastically encouraged Natsumi, urging her to try the treat as well, her eyes shining with anticipation. Natsumi agreed, a little confused, and carefully brought the large piece to her mouth. The girl took the first bite with slight tension. After the first bite, Natsumi's eyes widened in surprise and she happily exclaimed that it was incredibly delicious. Chris watched her reaction with a satisfied smile. Chris explained that the yokin was an expensive gift from Honami Dono. She fondly remembered the person from whom she received this delicacy. Natsumi excitedly talked about the taste of adzuki beans, noting their slight sweetness and pleasant texture. The girl enthusiastically shared her observations, causing Chris to smile. Chris asked with playful surprise if Natsumi was the daughter of a nobleman. Natsumi laughed in response, shyly waving away such a suggestion. Natsumi turned to Chris curiously, asking if she was into kendo. Chris, slightly surprised, asked what exactly she meant. Chris held up a wooden sword, explaining that it was a sword for fencing. Natsumi watched her with interest, not fully understanding what she was talking about.